Do you want to be a part of the CoCo community? Sure, we all do. So join this free weekly live talk show to find out how easy it is to watch at home and learn about your color computer. At the CoCoNation, more than 9 million men and women have participated in the community without setting foot outside their homes. And now at home in your spare time, you can see what's happening, or even join the discussion. Choose from any one of these segments: panel intros, project updates, acquisitions, CoCo thoughts, featured interviews and events, the Game On Challenge, news, Ron's Garage, CoCo commercials, show coverage, panel goodbyes, or you can join one of our extra shows. You can choose from the Game On Challenge Live or CoCo Tech. Join the CoCoNation right now.
Click the link for the free information TJB Chris spoke about. Then decide if you want to watch the CoCoNation Live Show, the world's leading live weekly talk show featuring the Tandy Color computer, its siblings, cousins, and red-headed stepchildren. Visit thecoconation.com. There is no obligation and no salesman will visit you. Visit thecoconation.com.
The CoCoNation show is an unscripted, live, and interactive broadcast. Anything can and will happen. The views and opinions expressed by members of the panel and the live audience are their own, and not necessarily those of the CoCoNation show, its sponsors, affiliates, or subsidiaries. Open minds are encouraged, and a sense of humor is recommended. Thank you for being a part of the CoCoNation.
Radio Shack? Okay.
What?
The 80s called.
Welcome to the CoCoNation, the world's first live and interactive talk show featuring the Tandy color computer and its hardware cousins.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CoCoNation Show, episode 364. How's everybody doing?
Not bad.
We made it. Everybody catch up on their sleep from Coco Fest?
Not really.
Not really. Oh, let's see. All right. First up, we got introductions. Top left-hand corner, yours truly. Next over, Kevin Holloway.
Hello, everybody.
And then we got Bob Emery.
Howdy, folks. Welcome.
And Rick Euland.
Greetings.
And in the center square, Henry Gernhardt.
Hi, folks. Welcome to the CoCoNation. My name's Henry, and today it's going to be fun.
And then we got Ken Waters.
I've got a pot of coffee here, so I'm ready for the news.
And the other Canadian, L Curtis Boyle.
Welcome to the show, everyone, and I'm primed up with coffee as well.
To keep yourself awake during the news?
Yeah.
And that's why I own stock in Tim Hortons.
Ew. I would never drink Tim Hortons.
You forget Ken's a coffee snob.
I
will
good
drink
coffee.
anything with caffeine pretty well. So,
all right. Next up, we got Ron Delvaux.
and he's muted.
Sounds better than ever.
I'd like everybody to stop and start tomorrow so I can be with you because my son's visiting and I won't be on today. So,
okay.
hello and goodbye.
All right. Family's important.
Yeah.
So,
See you guys.
all righty.
Bye.
Thanks for
Bye.
stopping in.
Bye.
Before I go, tell me what the show's going to have so I know what I missed.
I already posted the
we'll-
news notes, so you can check that out on the
All right.
Discord.
And the rest of it, we'll let you know in about 4 hours.
Yeah, really. Bye, guys. Thanks.
All right, bye. All right. And last but not least, we have Jason, the Coco Man.
Absolutely. I'm here traveling the highways and byways of North America.
Looking for this
Through the
next coal roller
Coco-Nation.
coaster.
No roller coaster today, but we're just here for the CoCoNation and the CoCoNation show now with I don't know, with something. now with traffic. I'm sorry, I'm paying attention to driving. I'm just not going to be able to hold a candle to
You want to?
to the brake key today with the overly long enthusiastic introduction. Hey, I was quick
Well,
today.
so far it's pretty long.
Yeah, you beat him on length already, I think.
Just
I
warn us.
think I hit the brake.
Yeah, well, just warn us before the colorful descriptions arise.
Right.
Oh, all the colorful metaphors.
You son of a.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, right-
Jason's
right
review of other
I-
drivers is what we call that segment.
I
Stay
think
safe.
You're mistaking me with David Ladd driving.
Or Mr. Brian in a car
Yes.
wash. All right. In the chat, we have Kevin Holloway, Wayne Campbell, L Curtis, J.E. Jones, 3141, Jim Rye, Sixty, Tom Eric Gunderson, Mark Siegel. Let's see. Spenny 108, Frederick Provancha, Michael Zwiffel, Julian Brown, Chris Dries, 8 Bits in the Basement. And that catches us up on the chat. All right. So first up is project updates. Rick, I believe you had something today.
Sure. Expand my face and I will show you what I have. Here's my Beamon. That's the one. And I guess you can guess the project from this balanced breakfast. Of,
Not a clue.
DIN plugs of some sort.
DIN plugs.
Bigger than a bread box.
Oh, is this you getting your joysticks ready for the Coco?
So we now have preformed bodge wires and so forth leading on towards this mess on my desk, which is in fact,
to adjust those
switch them
fix
over.
the IBM PC Junior joystick.
I've done it so many times that I actually know what wires and what size and how to bend them. So you just do all of that. And then the pro tip is you have a jack here that you plug your plug insert into so that this plastic thing doesn't melt from being soldered on.
So when it softens up, it doesn't start deforming, right?
Exactly. And then the other pro tip is you'll notice all of the cable hoods are already on. This makes the average cable length 2 inches longer than if they weren't already on. Because I would sort some of the plugs on and then have to cut them off and put the cable.
Yeah, that's what I end up having to do. I always have to desolder it again, slide the sleeve on, then resolder it back up again, and then and then the jack is all melted.
Yeah. So yeah, pro tip.
It's like your signature.
Direction.
And if you don't, and I've read somewhere, if you don't have a jack to put that DIN connector in, I've never tried it, but I've read on some of the ham sites that you can stick it in a potato.
That makes sense. Little cooling action.
Yeah, then you can eat the potato afterwards.
Yeah, you got.
Yeah, you bake the potato while you're soldering.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
You just jab the potato, and just put it up to your mouth, and just take a bite. Yeah.
And then in another project, I had to dig out my Coco one. So here's this very sweet looking D board.
That's I was just gonna say that's an older one. D or E.
And yeah, this is a D. And to our trivia, that early pre-production Coco keyboard existed through this model of D board.
Oh, you're right. You got the extra.
Here's the eight-legged wonder right there. So it made it that far. And then from
I don't
there,
remember if my D board had that or not. Huh.
I wonder if
from this at some point in the D board range, they went to one like this, but the back didn't have screws. It was melded together.
Yeah.
And I don't think that one had the extra feet. And then by the F board, they switched to this one with a plastic back and a Mylar thing. So somewhere right in that range is where we've got the mystery keyboard that I don't have.
So it's like I wonder if they left the tabs in to provide extra support around the bezel, and then later decided they really didn't need that after all.
Yeah, I don't know, because it just it doesn't do.
It doesn't sit on anything, does it?
No, and the bezel lays on top of the.
Or
on top
was
of
that keyboard used as some other computer that had different mounting holes?
Well, it's just made in Japan, so yeah.
You mean like Videotek Smart or
even something non-Tandy that was made by like Alps or something, wasn't it?
This one just says made in Japan. It doesn't really have a JM as the stamp.
I do remember my D-board one had the screws, 30 tiny little screws, whatever the hell it is in the back there to hold it on. And it did have the same color brown that you got there.
Yeah,
I don't remember the extra holes though.
Okay,
it might have though. That's so long ago since I lost that one when it got broken a move.
And to be honest, this one was the metal switches, and they switched to like rubber domes for a minute. And the rubber dome one had the melted back on it, and that was a horrible keyboard. So,
that was a really cost-reduced one.
Yeah, and then they switched back to this other one with the plastic back in the Mylar, but there was an intermediate one in there, I think, that I don't have yet. Anyway, that's my Coco trivia for the week. I will. One of these days, I will own every keyboard Tandy ever used,
and make a key fix for all of them.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, Mark, I forgot. I do have one little tiny update.
Okay.
Let me sneak it in.
Sure. Here's time.
The upcoming CoCoTech episode, where I'll be showing a graphics technique that I don't think's ever been done on the Coco in BASIC before. Nick Marentes will be joining me. He's actually working on a little mini game project that's going to be using those techniques as well. I don't know if he'll have it ready to download and play by the time we do it, but we'll demo it as far as it's gotten, as well as the general techniques and stuff. So that'll be at least a few weeks in the future yet, because I haven't had time to really work on my end of it either yet. But you can look forward to that, and that's about the only teasing I'll give you. But Nick will be co-presenting with me.
Okay. All right. Anybody else project updates? No? Okay. Do we have any discussions today?
I believe so. Probably going to be a short show today. There's fair
Bob's
bit of news,
not
but not a
building.
ton.
What can we do?
How short is a short show? That means it's only 4 hours?
Yeah, we were less than 4 last week.
Yeah,
surprisingly.
Oh, I was busy last week. That's why.
Well, that's all right. I got projects waiting for me when we get done
Yep,
here today.
me too.
Plenty of potential projects out there for sure.
I've got no back door in my house that'll open and close right now. So,
And I'm down a fridge. So, let's see. All right. Well, next up then would be Game On. You ready, Ken?
Sure.
where's your co-host, Ken? He never seems to show up anymore.
He's probably sleeping.
I think you should fire him and replace him with Henry or something.
Welcome everybody to the CoCoNation Game On Challenge of the Week results video. This week we played that classic dungeon exploring game, the one that Nick Marentes loves so much that he secretly wants to make a version of his own, Rogue. We had a total of 13 players. They were Strychnine with 112, Mike 144, Sloopy Malibu 723, Tech Cowboy 883, Jim Rye 964, Leap 1045, Coconut Bob 1202, Tasman 1435, Ed Rhodes 2547, L Curtis Boyle 2843, Canadian Retro Things 3338, Dr. Ted 3697, and this week's number one score was Sabhead with 3,721. Thanks everybody that played. We'll see you again next week.
And the CoCoNation salutes Sabhead. Good job.
Good job.
Salute.
Good score.
Yeehaw!
And I'd like to give a thank you to Tasman for pointing out to me that Sabhead actually wrote his score in wrong on the Game On Challenge, but his screenshot was right. He reversed a couple of the numbers, so if Tasman hadn't pointed that out to me last night, he wouldn't have been in first place.
Well, shouldn't that cause him to be disqualified because isn't that in the rules?
That's why it's good to always have a screenshot so I can see what your score actually was. So if you reverse
Except for
a
Nick
couple of
Marentes,
numbers,
you can't count any of his screenshots because they're all Photoshop BS.
No, you can't. But that's too bad Nick's not here. I was hoping that because we're going to be discussing his review of this game.
Oh, you did find it?
I found it.
Awesome.
Okay, so we will first start out with the dynamic color news from January of 1988. As soon as I find it, there we go.
Great, my mouse just died.
Lovely. Okay, so they do a review of Rogue here, and again, as many of these reviews are, it's just rehashing how you play the game. He does point out that as with many games where so much is going on, there are a large number of command options. Fortunately, you don't have to actually learn them all to start enjoying the game, so you can actually jump in and start playing without knowing all the intricacies of the game. And he goes through, talks bunch more about the keys and what they do. And his reaction to this game is, if you like a challenge and a game that will keep you occupied for more than a few minutes at a time, then Rogue is a game for you. It's an engrossing game that could keep you tied up for hours, and I totally have to agree with that because I have lost many, many hours to playing this game.
I was going to say only hours?
Days. Weeks.
I've lost months of my life playing this stupid game.
And it's very replayable because every time it's a different layout to the thing, and also the items that you find are never the same. So like one time you find an orange potion, it could be poison. The next time you play, it could be a potion of strength. So it randomizes what each potion does as well, so that you can't just learn, oh yeah, don't drink that one because it's going to be poison. Because
Yeah, and there's some that it'll tell you the effect that you feel, like you suddenly feel warm all over.
Yeah,
and
but
then
not
you have
what
to
it does to you.
determine what that is. No, those do stay consistent. So if it says warm all over, it's going to mean the same thing every game.
Yeah, but you won't
So once
know
you kind of
what
play
color.
along enough, you'll discover, that's restore strength,
Yeah.
whatever it happens to be.
So the what the potion does when you drink it doesn't change, but the type of potion then it is changes.
Yeah, the color.
From time the color. So,
that goes the same for rings, staves,
Yeah.
There's a lot of randomness to it, so you never play the same game twice.
Exactly. One of the reasons that you lose many, many hours, months, weeks, days, years to this game. Now, next thing is the Australian OS9 newsletter from November 1988. This is a review by Mr. Nicholas Marentes. So he starts out by saying, I'll tell you right now, this program is absolutely bleep. Whatever you do, don't buy this program. I don't think this program is even worth pirating. It's a great way to cut down on software piracy. And then he does a bunch of complaining and the negative points. One of the main things that he complains about is it's very hard to control. There are so many keys to control the action, which of this style of game, when this came out, that was normal.
Well, even the sequels like Hack and NetHack and stuff basically used this, except with some ANSI. So it was.
Yeah. And sound, well, it sounds better with the volume turned down. There, I don't actually have to disagree with him. Sound was no big thing on it, but
yeah, it's when you hit a trap. That's pretty well the only sound. And I think on the EOU version, I replaced it just with the standard Control G because I actually put in a custom sound routine blowing mini bytes just to do something that's built in the OS. Why did you do that?
Yeah. But having the sound turned off doesn't detract from the gameplay.
No.
And then his positive points are, well, the packaging looks all right. Which there I have to totally, I agree the packaging looks nice. But this game has so many positive points, some that we've already talked about with the replayability of the game.
Yeah, the fact that it's a really decent dungeon crawl with a lot of detail, which if you've ever played D&D, that's the type of stuff you just love doing.
So, Nick, tell us how you really feel.
Right.
And then he says, I hope Tandy sacked the guy who passed this program through the computer marketing division. Which is interesting because this was a huge, I don't know how it sold on the color computer, but I know on many, many other systems, it sold really well.
Yep.
Between 1980 and 1988, this game was released on the Amiga, the Amstrad, the Atari 8-bit, the Atari ST, the C64, the CPM, MS-DOS, Macintosh, TOPS 20, which I've never even heard of, the CoCo, Unix, and ZX Spectrum.
Well, this is based on a program that was first written on a game program that was first written for like
a mini,
one of the early, not quite mainframe maxi minis, right?
Yeah.
Right. So by now it was on everything.
Yeah. So by the time it released for the 3, it would have been young enough that the folks who were doing who were young enough that the folks who were getting into PC gaming would still have experienced user interfaces like this, and old enough that there were graybeards that had been playing it and that looked at it with nostalgia.
Hi, Rick. You're the only graybeard on the panel today.
And this game was actually originally written on a PDP-11.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So Nick goes on to say that more programs like this and a lot of CoCo 3 owners are going to dump their CoCos for a Commodore or Atari.
Which both had Rogue.
Which both had Rogue and were huge sellers on both those systems. So if you had dumped the CoCo for a Commodore or Atari, you probably would have ended up buying Rogue.
I think to say how popular Rogue was, here's a good way of doing it. On the mainframe, it was free. Or not the mainframe, on the mini, like the PDPs, and etc.
Yeah.
They charged for it on all the microcomputers, and people bought it.
Yep.
Right.
So, I mean, there's no way this is a bad game. He's just completely wrong.
I'm gonna guess this Nicholas guy writes arcade games.
I'm also going to guess he hates OS9.
Just off the
That's
top
fine.
of my head, I'm going to say he's an
says
arcade game guy.
He says it's bad exposure for the OS9 operating system, and I know one of the complaints that he had was that it's in black and white. Well, considering it was originally written on a PDP-11, then
yeah, probably running on an ADM
no
3.8
sound and
terminal or something.
monochrome. Yeah.
now
you ran terminals.
not only was it released on that many systems between 1980 and 1988, in recent years, it's been ported to a number of different modern operating systems. So people are still playing this on the Mac, on Windows, on Linux, like just a ton of different operating systems have versions of this. And it won a number of awards for the different systems that it was released on. As a matter of fact, in 2009, PC World named it number 6 on the 10 greatest PC games ever. So,
yeah. Scott Cooper in the chat actually, I think, sums up pretty good too. This game shows how games don't need good graphics and sound to be fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's not the point.
And I know with Nick, he complained that it didn't look nice. Well, because he didn't try to get into the gameplay of it.
Yeah, but he also admitted, I think, on the challenge live, that he doesn't like D&D in general. Like that's just not his type of game. So,
right.
Which is also going to slant it because this is. I know hugely this was something everybody that I played.
I think it's
D&D
also
with
proof of
back
his
in the
brain
day.
damage. Honestly,
Yeah.
If you don't like D&D, like what the hell's wrong with you?
Well, and
talk about he's saying that this game is too complicated to play. Well, let's think of some of his games.
Yeah, Neutroid.
Well,
the only game where you can get a better score by not trying than trying.
Fun game, interesting game. The only way to win is not to play.
Rick, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say about appearance. Think about how many tile-based games that are just basically this.
Yeah.
Do they just have programmable tiles?
And this, this is a game. It's not the first roguelike game. What was the first roguelike game? There was one before this that wasn't as popular.
Well,
like in the minis, you mean?
No, it was an Apple II. It was actually an Apple II game.
Telengard?
Just a second.
Oh, okay. I got my head around it. A roguelike before Rogue itself showed up.
Yeah, because Rogue set the standard.
Okay.
This set the standard, but there was one game.
I mean, Calibet's really, but that's not a roguelike.
I'm thinking Adventure.
No, it wasn't Adventure. It was Apple something. Let me see. Here.
Like Siegel just said, you can't have a Unix-like system without Rogue.
Nope.
Beneath Apple Manor was actually the first game like this. It was released in 1978. So it was the first kind of dungeon crawler game like this. But Rogue was definitely the one that brought it into the mainstream. As a matter of fact, after Rogue was released, Beneath Apple Manor was re-released with some upgrades on a few different systems. So
now the pre-Rogue is more roguelike.
Yep, exactly. So
yeah, he's just plain wrong on this one. I understand that he doesn't like this genre of game, which I mean you can't force somebody to like a genre.
Which is kind of bad for a reviewer to go in and say, because I don't like this game, it's crap.
Or I don't like this type of game. No matter what game like this you throw at me, I'm going to think it's crap. Yeah.
You got to look at actually what the game is, how it plays, like how appealing it is to people.
By the way, Mark Siegel's saying now we need Moria on the CoCo.
Moria?
Yeah, that's a much later roguelike, kind of like Hack and NetHacker later versions as well. Which one is it? Hack or NetHack that has a little dog that follows you around? He kind of co-attacks with you. I can't remember which one that is.
I don't know. I got more into writing things than playing them and dropped out of the.
I mean, the fact that Rogue takes up like 48 to 56K itself just for code. I know because we were trying to port it to Physix and stuff, there was too big. And when I gave him my shrunk version, I think Boise managed to fit it on one of the new OS9 systems because it wouldn't fit before. So to do a hack or NetHack or Moria is going to take extra room. You're going to have to start doing like multiple modules and swap them in and out like Flight Sim 2 does. But yeah, it's definitely possible. Coco could definitely handle it. And you could gussy it up a bit. I've even thought, like I had reached out to Dave Ladd and a few others back when I was disassembling Rogue the first time around and going, you know what, if we redefine one of my extended character sets, I could add in extra things to replace the monsters. But because they're text characters, you have to fit 26 different unique monsters into 8x8 pixels. And, you know, that's going to be a little bit difficult. But the other thing you could do is you could change it to use get put buffers instead of pixels and make them bigger, like 16x16 or something like that. And you would force you to scroll constantly, no matter what res you're running. But then you could do like, you know, full 16 color type stuff. And I know some of the later ones like the Amiga actually did use multicolor. They didn't use the text fonts. The PC used color with ANSI, but it was still text. I think you're a happy face character running around.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'm not too happy getting attacked by a troll. I'll tell you that.
I tried this out on the Macintosh, and it's quite a different experience to play because it's all mouse based.
Oh, that would drive me nuts.
So
is that all like menu drop downs? Like,
no, you have to click on direct, like you have to move to where you want to walk to and click.
So like, how do you quaff an ivory potion or something?
You have little side panels with inventories and stuff, and then you just go into the side panel, find your potion, and you click on it.
That would
it's Castle of Theragram.
You know what that reminds me of, Ken? That reminds me of Castle of Theragood after Dungeons of Daggerrat. They tried something new, tried to mouse it up, and loused it up instead.
Yep.
It just lost all of its charm.
Anyway, tips and tricks for playing this game.
Oh God, there's thousands.
Yeah, definitely one of the main ones is you're going to find areas where there's hidden doors, and they take a while to find. So you got
sometimes like 30 searches, and it depends on your character's. One of his internal attributes, is it strength or something? I can't remember. There's an internal attribute that's based on as well as random, and also what level you are.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, sometimes it might take you 30 searches to find a single door.
Yeah. So you just got to keep trying and trying and trying.
There's always going to be like the way the maze is randomly generated. There's always 3 sections across by 3 sections down, and they can either be a room or they can be a catacomb, which is like random hallways. So if you have a third, like if you divide the screen into 9 squares, like we are now, well, not quite, I guess, on our Zoom we are, then you will always have something in those areas. And you can kind of use that to figure out where doors might be, because you can kind of figure out, you know, this is the only room that could lead here.
Mm-hmm.
And I've already, you know, searched everywhere else type things. So you can kind of figure that out. So there's that. Some people try to rush through to the bottom. Don't. That's a dumb idea. You will start leveling up the monsters way faster than. Yeah, you have to build yourself. Try to search every room. Don't make stupid moves. If you get to powerful creatures that you absolutely have to get to because, say, they're blocking a door or hiding an item or something like that, then start, you know, throwing arrows and crossbow bolts. Hit them at a distance to weaken them so that you can more likely take them out in one hit when they get up close. Occasionally, you can do stuff like a staff of lightning and just zap them across. That's always fun. The most critical ring for me is the ring of slow digestion, because if you can find that, your use of food drops like crazy. Of course, that's when the game throws you a ton of free food, but at least you don't have to worry about it. Don't put 2 on at once though, because then it becomes mega curse and you go through food like instantly. Like within 3 moves, you're weak and fainting. It actually just drains you dry. So you just put 1 on. One technique I use is the first time I find a plain leather armor that's not cursed, I will swap out my ring mail and put the leather armor, because that makes me immune to equators. I don't know what you pronounce that as. But they're the ones that drain and rust your armor. So if you have anything, studded leather, ring mail, scale mail, plate mail, that all will be affected and drained every time they hit you. But leather, it does nothing. And then if you start getting scrolls and stuff to pump up the armor class of your armor, it doesn't go down if it equator attacks you, or equator. How do you guys pronounce that, just out of curiosity?
Equator.
Anybody else?
A-Q-U-A-T-O-R.
A-Q-U-A-T-O-R.
Yeah, Aquator.
Okay.
Aqua is in water.
I assume it's a water monster because it's rusting your armor.
Yeah. Well, the Aqua was, I just didn't know if it was Ator or Ator. I don't know what Tor means, besides a series of fantasy books. Or no, it was a fantasy book publishing company.
You need to make sure that if you've got an Ator there, you don't confuse it with a Detour or a Seator, because if you confuse it with a detour, you might think you're freeing up memory. If you confuse it with a C-tor, you're giving it memory that you can use for something else.
Nerd joke, nerd joke.
How many points did I get? Oh, come on, Jason. It was better than that.
Other tips. Let's see. If you're gonna like this doesn't apply to the Game On challenge, but if you're going to be playing to try to win it without cheating, and that's another thing. Yeah. When you save the game, as soon as you reload the game, you have to run the command line. You won't be able to do this in the EOU from the prompt because you have to put in the save game name. But it will immediately after loading it in delete the save game so that you can't go back to it. So if you want to, if you progress, you have to resave. Well, if you go to another window, thanks to multitasking, you can just do an attribute command and tell it that's not rewritable. And then you have a permanent save state, and then you can just save another one later on, and then just keep changing that attribute, and then you become basically you'll never have to go back and start over. So that's a trick I used.
Can you also just copy it in another name?
You can do that too.
But this is
that takes
easy,
extra
yeah.
disk space, so I used to play this on floppy, so that was a concern.
Now the save game file saves the seed that generated the dungeons, right?
I believe so. It doesn't really matter though, because I think when you go back up, I don't think it keeps track of the previous ones.
As long as you've got the random seed, you're fine. Because I mean, you can figure everything out from there if it's a PRNG.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't looked at the assembly in a while now, so I can't remember. There's also this is something I mentioned during the live show. There is a cheat / testing. There's more meant for testing, where you can instantly reveal any potion, any staff, any ring, and tell you exactly what it is. You can also create objects, create monsters, all kinds of stuff. And it was meant more for debugging type thing. The code's entirely within the executable, and they change one branch always to a branch never or something like that, or a BEQ to a branch never or something like that. So if you change one byte, and you go to my rogue entry on my game site to find that out, you can actually change it so that that's enabled. And there's a certain control key sequence you do to enable that. Then you got a whole other set. You think there's too many commands now, Nick? There's double them, because that's how many you're going to get when you start doing the debug mode. And I will tell you right now, that is already enabled in the EOU version of Rogue, so you can actually just go look up the keys and have fun. But that's only if you're really desperate. I don't know, just there's so much things. The diagonal keys, I would memorize those, because there's sometimes when you're really weak, and if you are trying to run to a door that's diagonally away from you, if you're going like left, down, left, down, left, down, that gives the other monsters a chance to catch up and beat the snot out of you. So you don't want to do that. If you actually get used to using the diagonal keys, which are, what is it, Y, B, I can't remember off the top of my head, but around that area of the keyboard, use those. The number sign trick that Ken was talking about for doing searches, that actually works with all commands. If you want to do 9 attacks to the right, or 9 moves to the right, or 9 searches, or various things, you can just type the number, and it will handle up to a 2-digit number. So if you want to do 99 times of something, you can do that as well.
That will get you very hungry.
Yeah. Unless you have that ring of slow digestion. What else? Certain monsters will drain your strength or your level, like vampires and stuff. So you have to be really careful of those. Those are the ones that usually attack from a distance.
Rattlesnakes will drain your strength.
Yeah. Now you can slowly build your strength back with a gain strength potion, but if you get a restore strength potion, it'll take you all the way back to normal instantly. So that's the preferable way to do it if you can.
Now, one thing about it though, when it's randomly picking your potions and everything else, it doesn't necessarily include every potion in every game. So there's a limited number of potions that it chooses from the list, isn't there? I thought there was like 17 potions and it chooses like 10 or 12 for the game.
I haven't looked at that. There's a technical document that somebody had posted back in CompuServe.
Yeah.
It was Kevin Darling even. That kind of explained after they went through the debug mode to figure out how everything worked there.
I think it's also random exactly which potions you're getting every game. So
yeah. Some of the potions can be used as offensive weapons. So a potion of poison will damage a monster. A potion of paralysis will freeze it in place if you hit it. And then you can beat the thing up even if it is quite strong. Some of them will recover faster than others, depending on how strong they are.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So yeah, you can use those. Yeah. Yeah, I'll say the flask shatters, and then if it's a paralysis, he won't move. So there's that whole side of things too. If you want better accuracy and more damage with your projectile weapons, like crossbow bolts, arrows, not with a spear, because a spear is a separate weapon by itself. You can either hit hand to hand or you can throw it at somebody. But crossbow bolts, if you have a crossbow, and arrows, if you have an actual quiver for shooting them, if you wield that weapon first and then start throwing, your accuracy and your damage will go way up compared to just throwing them while you're wielding a sword. Because basically you're literally just throwing arrows by hand like darts. You still can damage, and once you get powerful enough that you can still kill monsters that way, but you can actually do better. But then you have to take the extra time to do the wield command and then wield back to a sword if you're into hand-to-hand. So I don't usually do that unless I'm like low on strength and trapped and somebody's coming at me. Then I might take it and hope that the extra strength of actually using the proper launcher will kill the monster before it comes up to me. Sometimes you just want to rest, like the 9 period. If you want to just rest to recharge your strength and you're in a nice big well-lit room so you can kind of see when they're coming and react to it, you can do that. There's the light staff is quite handy. If you get into a room and you have no idea what's coming up ahead and you're kind of worried that you're going to die soon, you can zap it with light and it'll fill the entire room for a period of time. Of course, things like monster detection, potions. If you're playing the graphics version, I can't remember if it does anything different on the text version, but the graphics version, if you do magic detection, if it's a positive magical item, it'll give you a little star-like looking like thing, and it'll give you a skull if it's a bad one. So if it's a cursed object, it could be a cursed hand weapon, it could be a cursed potion, cursed staff, whatever. So if you have one of those, when you first get to a brand new level and you haven't seen any of the rooms yet, you just use that particular one, and all of a sudden, all the magical items in the entire level, all 9 room areas, will be lit up and tell you which ones are good and which ones are bad. So that's definitely handy. Like I said, there's so many. If I sat here, I probably could do the whole show on this.
That's there we go. We'll have to do an entire, just to annoy Nick, we'll do an entire show on Rogue one of these days.
Nice.
See, Nick, here's reason 412 that you're wrong. You see, in Rogue,
for instance, like in the chat, Peter Willard said Rogue was always such a fun game, no matter what machine it was running on. I'll have to disagree with that a bit on the Macintosh, the black and white Macintosh version. It's not quite as fun.
As I showed on the show, too, for those that don't know, somebody back in the late 80s actually made an alternate graphic font for Rogue, which I demoed briefly on the show. I have to patch Rogue so that you can select it more easily, because right now you basically have to start it in a window, but you have to select the graphic screen and that alternate font first, and then run it. In some ways it looks better, in some ways it looks worse, so I'll leave it up as an exercise to the player to which one they prefer. But if you guys ever want to create a font, for Rogue, it doesn't use a 224 character font; it just uses the 128. There's some font editors already in EOU. You can devise your own if you want. I can even tell you where each of the items are, so you can, like what a staff is and what character code.
Sweet.
But eventually I would like to do a colorized version of it at some point and just kind of skip the whole font thing and just use get put buffers. But it would have to scroll, or I guess I could do an 8x8. Or
does it
color
really
mode.
need color though?
Well, you could just, like I said, the Amiga one looks quite nice. I don't know if you played the ST and the Amiga ones. Well, actually,
No, I
I don't know if the
haven't.
ST did. Yeah, the Amiga one looks pretty decent. That's one good use of color on it.
I guess if you made it more of a graphical game, then the color would look better on it. Yeah. Like if you actually made monsters.
Yeah. And I understand why they did it the way they did. One, it's using a font's a lot easier than having get put buffers you have to keep track of.
Mm-hmm.
But two, also, this had to run on a fairly minimal CoCo system, right? So they tried to make it so that you didn't use as much RAM as possible. So they
Had to
use a
run
16
on a
color.
fairly minimal lot of systems.
Yeah. I mean, the Commodores and stuff could kind of cheat a bit because they had redefinable character sets even for their text fonts. So basically, you just redefine the things to look like different things, and it's just printing, basically. Even the VIC-20 had that option. We didn't have a redefinable. We did have that extra pin, I think it is, you can hook up on the VDG where you can have external ROM you can select on and off, which is how the lower kit by Dennis Bathory Kits and other things worked. And I actually was looking at Rainbow and Color Computer Magazine ads recently, looking for something else. And I actually did find a few that actually had built-in, graphic sets with Space Invaders and people walking and stuff too. So we did have that. Just, you had to buy hardware for like $100 Canadian or something to get it. So that wasn't quite worth it. Also, Rick or Nick, if you don't like black and white, you can change the foreground background colors to whatever the hell you want. If you want, purple on green,
Yeah,
go
but
for
he's
it.
still going to complain it's only 2 colors.
I could set up a little baseline program, another window that randomly changes the colors for each level or something. Now it's got them all.
All right, so obviously a lot to say about Rogue. Most of it is just proving Nick's review of it wrong.
Yeah, pretty much. I can't think of one thing he got right in that, except maybe the box cover art.
Well, then the sound is not the sound.
Well,
Isn't
you
great.
sound, yeah, okay, he's right there. I will give him that.
Yeah. So we got 2 things right.
Of all the days to be skipping the show.
Right?
Yeah, his ears will be burning by now. Scott Cooper in the chat says, has anyone ever made a basic version of Rogue for the Coco? I don't think it would fit unless you have a patch for basic to allow more than 32K. The fact that the OS9 version is a combination of raw machine language with a few C subroutine libraries like printf, but basically it's already been shrunk down just to fit it into 64K. I don't think there's enough room in basic unless you have some basic extension thing that lets you use the extra memory, or you
How about a
slim
banker
the
board?
game down features a bit.
Would a banker board help with that?
If you wrote it right, you could. Well, does the banker board have a driver for basic to swap chunks of a program in and out? I know
think you
Key
can only
264 did, but it's a little bit limited.
I think you can just swap in screens and stuff. And
Yeah, I mean, if you did a P mode 4 screen, for example, that would be 6K. If you had it in a different bank, you could save the 6K. But you could do it in ML, I think, if you really truncated it. But I don't think you could fit it in basic unless there's a basic, like Big Basic by Danosoft on the Coco 3. I think you could, because that actually allowed you to write a 490K basic program. There was some limitations on what you could do, but you definitely could do it there. But on standard basic on Coco 1, 2, or 3, I don't think you have enough room.
oh, Mark
Even the
Siegel
Dragon.
says you might have been able to do it on the deluxe.
Yeah, with the chain, keeping your variables common between chain programs. Yeah.
So when we get a deluxe board made and everything, somebody can write Rogue for it.
Sweet.
There we go. Now there's a reason to get that deluxe.
Got to get it done. We got to get Rogue to displace it.
We need a basic version of Rogue.
Speaking of deluxe, I did update the documentation on the Coco Wiki for some of the stuff that we showed at the fest that was not in there yet, because I kind of held off the last couple things I discovered just to have something new to show people. But that's been updated. You've already seen the update in the Discord if you're there, but if you on the Coco Wiki, that's been updated as well. And I did do a bit more disassembly on it last week. Not a ton, but a little bit. I'm still trying to figure out, I haven't got it mentioned on the wiki yet because I don't know what it does. But the chain command, which is basically the equivalent of run, except I knew already that you could tell it to chain to a program and then actually specify the line number to start at. You don't have to start at the beginning. And if you use the common command, which is telling you what variables you want to keep going between programs, you can use that and that's automatically passed. But there's a comma ALL option, and I can't figure out what the hell that does. I thought maybe that means all variables. Nope, doesn't copy in the variables unless you do a common command. So I'm not sure what it does. It doesn't error out or anything. It's actually in the code. I can see where it's checking to see if it's there. It sets a flag, and then it has about 47 nested subroutines, and then somewhere in there it's using that. I haven't figured that out yet, but there is an option on there that's not on the wiki or on the document I uploaded that I have to figure out.
And 60 wants
Mark, do you remember?
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
60 wants to know if there's any hardware updates on the deluxe. Since we're veering onto that topic right now, we may as well.
I know Brian. The reason he hasn't been in the show the last couple of weeks is because he's super busy. They've got a new place getting started up and running, so he hasn't really been home to even look at his stuff yet. So no, not at this point. Hopefully soon, though. I think he said he's going to be done by the end of May, so caught up, and then he can start looking at stuff again. Plus, we've got boxes of source, and we've got discs to go through, both on the Model 1, 3. Oh, I should mention for those of you that are Tier City Model 1 and 3 people as well as Coco people, Ira Goldklang's TRS-80 site has now gotten links to Ken's videos, and it's also got the downloads of all the stuff that Robert did, because Robert actually gave us permission for all his Coco and his Model 1 stuff to be freely released to whoever wants. There's no copyright, don't worry about it. And he's put up his 4 Model 1 games or programs on there. So there's Micro Music, Micro Movie, micro files and the basic utility program, the cross-referencing utility, are all up there, and you can freely download. Ira's been just like my game site. Unless I have permission from the author, I don't put the download there. It's not like the Internet Archive or the Color Computer Archive where we just put everything up until somebody complains. We get the permission first. But now that he has permission, Robert's stuff is all on there too. So if you want to download it. I don't know if he's got all the manuals though, Ken. We'll have to check with Ira. You might have to scan, or Brian might have to scan some in. You might even have some stuff here, like if Brian doesn't have micro. Which one is the one that it's in there? Is Micro Music? I can't remember. I think it's Micro Music that you're getting. So you may have to scan that and throw it up there too.
The Micro Music, I did find the Micro Music manual online. So
okay, but it's the same. If it's the same as your version, then yeah, because I know that one had a couple revisions, but I don't know if they redid the manual.
Because in the video, I actually used some screenshots from the manual.
I saw the cover. I didn't know if you like. I know Ira put covers up of pretty well every manual he's got, but he doesn't put the manuals up if he doesn't have copyright permission either. Usually, on his site anyway.
Oh, well, I actually did include a couple of the pages out of the Micro Music.
Okay.
Boy, you weren't paying attention, obviously. You're just probably listening to your own voice thinking, oh, isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, basking in the glow of my crackly, prepubescent voice still.
Okay, so moving on, the other game that we played this week was Zaksund, which...
Good sound effects.
Yeah, good sound effects. There you go.
See, that Nick should review that one.
There you go.
Opposite.
It's a playable version of Zaksund, but not as good.
No.
The whole
angle of view
angle is off, so it does mess you up a little bit if you're used to playing Zaksund.
No, he did that to make it easier to program. I will say that he had a reason.
I'm not saying that there wasn't good reason for doing that. It just does make it a little harder to play when you are absolutely used to the old version. Tips and tricks for playing that game: certainly when you're in space fighting the other ships, keep moving, because the minute you stand still, they do shoot you. They're very good shots compared to other versions of Zaksund that I've played.
Yep. One I'll repeat that I think I mentioned after the show ended, the live show. And when you're in space, once again, the ships will always come from the upper left corner, and they'll go slowly diagonally, and then they'll drop down sharp diagonal and then level out. That's them actually dropping their altitude.
Mm-hmm.
So once they drop to the bottom and start shifting, they're at the bottom. So if your ships are ready at the bottom, you can kind of fly with them. And if you time your shots right, you can just pick them off like crazy. And never get hit.
Don't stand still.
Yeah. So that's one. The Zaksund itself, he's always, you shoot him at the bottom. So as long as you line up horizontally and dodge, if he starts shooting the first time, I don't think he shoots at you, but after that he does. And his shots are fast, so you have to get out of the way quick. But you can basically take care of him every time that way pretty easily. But the other things about the game that are a bit odd, I mean, the sound effects are good, but it pauses the game dead stop while it's playing these longer sound effects. So, I mean, we got kind of used to that on early CoCo games. Or if you've written in BASIC, then that's pretty well normal too. The angle's off. The tanks, I still don't really know what to do them. Like they shoot out that thing on a string or something. I don't know. They're throwing a yo-yo at you or what? I'm not sure. But they don't seem to die. Like it just makes an explosion sound and keeps coming at you. I don't understand.
Maybe you're blowing up their bullets. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. So that's a bit off-putting. The keeping track of your ship in relative to the scenery or objects that you're flying, it doesn't do it properly. So if you're flying, say, behind an oil tank, but just behind it, it'll look like you're going over top of it or through it type thing. Like he didn't bother with the proper masking like Steve did on the official version.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's if it had come out months before Datasoft's version, it would have been, oh, this is not bad. And then, we would have been just odd with the Zaksund, but I think they came out roughly the same time in early 83 or 84. I remember the official launch of Datasoft Zaksund, it came out on the Atari and the Apple II in January. Something in February, maybe the TI-99, and then the CoCo, I think, in April or something like that. So it was the CoCo was the last of them. And this is before Radio Shack sold them. This is back when Datasoft was selling it direct. I think it was 83.
According to this
83 or 84.
website that I'm looking at, Zaksund came out in March of 1983. But it's not a very trustworthy website. But
No. I heard he just makes stuff up.
yeah.
Just tries to sound authoritative. But yeah, I mean, it's not a horrible game, but it's once you've played the actual Zaxxon, it's very far behind.
It is.
Except the sound. The sound is actually not bad. Except for the pause.
But hey, we've got to try them all.
Yep.
Just to see a game like this actually makes you appreciate how good the version of Zaxxon on the Coco really was.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I took my Coco to high school when we had the Apple II lab, they were all gathered around to play that version of Zaxxon on the Coco. They preferred it over the Apple II version, which you didn't hear from them too often. Donkey King was another. And Sailor Man, I guess, was kind of late in high school. So anyway, I'm guessing you probably have another game coming up.
Well, first, let's just take a quick look at...
Oh, you want to let you rub it in on Nick? Okay, go ahead.
During the live Game On Challenge, we had a few people in there. I think at the most, at one point, we had just about 5 people. Tech Cowboy joined us.
I still don't understand that's just about 5. What exactly does that mean?
Well, we had 5 people about to play, and as soon as Tech Cowboy brought his screen up, he suffered a power outage at his home, so he went off the air. So
really?
he had... Yeah, he just joined, and the power went out. So that's why it's just about 5. Because he technically was going to play. Yeah, he gets partial credit for being there. But as you can see, a couple of people playing Rogue and one person playing Zaxxund.
Now, we should point out here in Rogue, and this is something people may not know, Rogue will run on any window 20 by 12 or higher. So you notice the upper left one, somebody's playing it in a 40-column text screen, and the person in the middle bottom is playing on the 80-column text screen, plus you can run on a graphics screen with custom fonts. And if you use the G-Shell resizable windows, you can play Rogue alongside like Basic 09 or Zone Runner or any of the programs that are set for sizable windows. So you can actually size it to your heart's content.
Now, something I did want to point out that I discovered while playing, that I was playing this one, I'm the one in the top corner there on the 40-column screen.
Mm-hmm.
I was playing that off of the archive, and once I got down to about level 9, it started glitching out on me. So it was showing zeros all over the place, which
it
were
shouldn't be doing that.
Doing nothing. I'm wondering if it was that was supposed to be, because then all of a sudden there was also nothing for me to pick up in any of on the level. There was no potions, no armor, no scrolls or anything, but there were zeros all over the place. So I think it was some
That
sort
sounds
of
like a bad
glitch
copy.
there. And that was off the archive. So definitely play the one on EOU9 or EOU.
Yeah, because I mean, the archive had a 128K and a 512K version. It was never sold that way. You got one disc with Rogue, and if you had 512, you could pick the graphics font. If you didn't, you just pick 40 or 80 column.
I think
somebody
broke it when they split it apart.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, Rogue also has that huge Rogue DAT file. So if that file got corrupted in some way, shape, or form, it might be that's what's screwing up in the program itself. Is fine. I'm not sure, but yeah. It should not be doing that. I've played Rogue a lot off the original disc, and that never happened. Now, Ken, since you actually played on the 40 column where it actually has to like scroll your messages and scroll the screen in chunks across here, how did you find playing that?
It was fine, but I mean, that's the way I've actually played it on a lot of other systems. So, but here, you'll be able to see that some of the zeros right now. I think, did I come across one? Yeah, there, a couple of zeros in there that did nothing.
Yeah, that's weird. That's got to be a corrupt copy.
Yeah, so because I know there was I think a couple people had complained about coming across things they couldn't pick up.
Yeah, I joined a bit late, even later than you, and a couple of you were mentioning that bug, and I've never seen that, and I played Rogue a lot when I bought the game back in '88.
Yeah, so I think it's a problem with the copy that's on the archive.
So what I might have to do is make a new disk image for Guillaume and upload it to him and just make one. I don't know why you need a 512. I mean, basically you just pick, you can make a little batch script to tell you what memory you got, or even just read it directly.
So that was something that was discovered.
But for those you stuck running on a composite monitor or on, worse yet, RF on a Coco 3, I would recommend the 40 column version because it's a lot easier to read. By the way, the graphics also works on 40 column. If you make a 40 column window, you can play it in 40 column graphics. That'll zoom all the shapes up there a bit easier to see.
Okay. Anyway,
like I said, there's so much to talk about in Rogue. I could spend an entire show doing this.
That's the Thursday night Game On Challenge. That's where we play the 2 Game On challenges of the week that are currently running. Or if you don't feel like playing either of these,
if you're Bob Emery, you can play whatever the heck you want.
Yeah, or anybody. Anybody can play what they want.
But he's made it a tradition.
Yeah, he has. Although, he does usually play the Game On Challenge a little bit, and then he moves on to other stuff. But anything that's Coco, you can come and just join us, play, or you can just come and join us and chat. That's in the Game On Challenge channel on Discord, or the Game On Challenge Live, whatever that challenge. What's that name of that? Can't remember right now. It's just called Game On Challenge Live Voice and Video channel.
Oh, Ken, before I forget, another Rogue thing I was going to ask you about.
Okay.
So Rogue defaults in fast mode, indicated by that inverted fast in the lower right corner.
Yeah.
Which basically means it'll go in a direction, until it hits something that you have to make a decision, like a crossroad or a door or a monster.
Yep.
If you hit Shift F, you can shut that off, and then you can just turn fast mode on by individual command by hitting F first, just like the number keys on search.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, did you know about that? And then 2, if you did, do you prefer it being in default fast, or do you prefer it on being I get to pick which commands are fast?
I like it in default fast. Normally, when I played it, what I would do is I would have it in fast until there was something like I couldn't find a door or something, and I had to do searches. Then I'd turn fast off and just do it by key, like then 6 search or 5 search till I found the door. And then I go back into fast mode just because it's really monotonous to have to just keep hitting the key to go through the door or through like hallways and stuff.
Oh, because I just hit the F key and then hit the direction it goes until it operates like fast mode. It makes the next command fast.
Well, I never used that. I just always kept it in fast mode. But
because I know when I first started playing it, I did it like you, but I sometimes the fast mode I'd accidentally run far and I wanted to stop because I wanted to change direction to a door, up instead of left.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd waste the food and the time and hit a monster or something and die. So I got more used to shutting the default fast mode off, and I use the F key to do a fast on a single command at a time. And I much prefer that now because I tend to do better, but I didn't know if you knew about that or if you preferred one or the other.
I never really tried that. So I just shut the fast mode on and off whenever I wanted to.
Okay.
So
I'm done talking about Rogue. Sorry.
Okay. Thursday nights, you can join us to play whatever Coco game you feel like, but we recommend the Game On Challenge Live games. That's at 5 o'clock my time. Excuse me. Which is 8 o'clock Eastern, I guess. So Thursday nights, you should join us. Now, we have a new game this week. And that game is right here.
We haven't played that before?
Nope.
Wow. I thought we did.
I thought we did too, but I looked it up. It's not listed.
Wow.
Oh, is that the one where you have to keep shooting everybody in all sorts of different directions and you do directions different from the direction you're going?
Huh?
Slow down. We're old. We can't understand that fast.
No. One joystick moves you, the other joystick shoots. That's what I'm thinking. Okay.
So it's a
same as the arcade
game. It's a version of Robotron. Robotack.
Yep. 60 got it in the chat before you said it.
Okay. So there. Now, In the archive, it's actually written with only one T, so I don't know what the proper spelling of it is, but
Whatever the ad says.
because it doesn't have a title screen, so I just made this off of some guy's site. Now, if you're playing in an emulator, if you put both joysticks as the input, then you actually fire in whatever direction you're moving, so you don't have to use two joysticks. But what I found is a lot of fun for playing this game is you make one joystick, your movement joystick, your joystick, and then your firing joystick, your mouse, and then you can fire off in all different directions depending on which way you're moving.
Yeah, because then you do like a sweep. You run to the right side of the screen, but you fire left, and you run down, and you just take everything out.
Exactly. Or if you're playing on a real CoCo, then you just have to plug two joysticks in.
Yeah. Now, 60 mentioned in the chat here, and this is very true. Robotron, but easier. I expect really phenomenally high scores here because once you kind of get the swing of it,
very high scores in this game.
Yeah, and there's one big reason for that. He did not do the Hulks properly, and the other version of Robotron on the CoCo did, even though it's lower res and much more rare, and most people haven't even seen it. But the Hulks in the original arcade Robotron 2084. If you hit them, it just kind of ricochets off and it pushes them back a little bit, but they keep on coming. They're indestructible. They're called indestructible Hulks. Here, you just kill them like everything else. You can just mow down everybody. That was my only disappointment with this game, actually, because it runs fast, good sound effects, really good cooperative two-player game. This would have been a good one for the Game On Challenge two-player as well, because one person controls the movement, one person controls the firing. My brother and I used to do that. But it's too easy because of the indestructible Hulk thing in particular.
And there's no, there's not a setting for level, is there?
I don't believe so.
No. So yeah, I'm expecting some incredibly high scores, maybe even wrapping the game a few times for some people.
Yep, definitely could.
But we haven't played it before, and it's actually, it does get monotonous after a while, but it's fun at the start.
Yeah, if you've never played it before, it's a lot of fun. It's fast-paced, too, if you like fast-paced arcade games.
I think even Mark will get past the first screen.
Yep, I think so.
Well, I'll try.
And you can play one or two players. Like I said, you can also do cooperative one player if each person controls the stick. If you have a sibling, better half, kid, whatever, hanging around that wants to help.
Oh, no. This is, in fact, the earliest revision of the software for drifting in Pacific Rim.
I haven't played Pacific Rim, so
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's a movie. You get into the thing. There are two of them. They attach to each other. They use it. They both pilot the thing, and so one does one side of the brain, the other does the other. So hey, hand one the gun, hand one the direction. There you go. You got an early version of drifting.
Okay, so that's a movie, not a game?
I think it's a movie. I don't think there's a game. There might be a game. I could be wrong.
I'm glad I'm the only one who didn't get that.
We're too old, Jason. That's all I can tell you. Henry just hit the generation gap. That's what happened there.
Yeah. So that's the Game On Challenge for the next 2 weeks. So enjoy.
Yeah, Zaksund and Robotack for the next week.
So a couple of older games for the CoCo.
Yeah, because Robotack's the second game that Intracolor ever put out. They did Color P, hugely, widely, properly, positively reviewed. And Robotack, I think, came out by the end of '82, I think. So it was pretty close to the release date of like Donkey King or something. So, and it only needed 16K on a CoCo 1 for the cassette version. I don't know if the disc version fits in 16K. You might need 32, but there's your minimums. If you find a cassette version, if you have cassette, you can run it on a 16K CoCo 1 or 2. No extended basic required. You do need two joysticks.
Okay. Well, since I see that Curtis is out of coffee,
How did you know?
Because you lifted the cup up and I saw the bottom of it.
You're right. Boy, I sure hope that worked out right properly there.
So let's run a commercial and then we'll be ready for news.
Yep.
Now I updated the Patreon list, so let's see if I've mispronounced anybody this time.
Lovely.
Hey, Amy. Hey, Taylor. We're watching the CoCoNation show. Yeah, we are. Woo! You should too.
Hello everyone, it's your good buddy, your good pal Amigo, and joined by that dastardly The Brent from ARG Presents.
You're watching CoCoNation.
I feel like that should have been longer.
The CoCoNation show would like to thank the following patrons: Alex Gare, Brendan Donahue, Brian Walsh, Brian Weasler, Kieran Anscombe, Coconut Bob, Daddy Burrito, David Ladd, Derek Smithson, Diego BF109, Don Barber, Eric Canales, Frederick Segard, Glenn Hewlett, Graham Wabke, Grant Leedy, Henry Strickland, Justin Larson, Ken Reichard, Kevin Holloway, Paul Fiscarelli, Paul Shoemaker, R. Allen Murphy, Retro Tech Time, Rob Inman, Rocky Hill, Steve Batson, TJB Chris, Tom C., Tom Gunderson, Tom S., William A. Things. Thank you so much, patrons. If you would like to support the CoCoNation show, sign up at patreon.thecoconation.com.
Welcome to everybody's favorite segment, Who's New to Discord?
Fenrock says, it's Mark. I'm part of the FujiNet crew. Managed to grab a Coco 2 at VCF East. I'm from London, UK, and also have a Dragon 32. I've bought Coco DV for both of them to spruce up the videos which arrived recently, and then I'll be doing more FujiNet dev for them. White Fox says, your name? Scotty. Coco 2 was the first computer my parents bought for my brother and I in the 80s. My father made the decision after reading a Consumer Reports thing comparing the systems at the time. Every so often I try to reach out in various groups wondering if people I knew are still around, including remembering local BBSs in New Jersey back in the 80s. The Coco community in Jersey was awesome. The previous bios were edited for time. Thanks to Boysen, Glenside Computer Club, Paul Fiscarelli, Paul Shoemaker, Tandy Color Computer 3, and the CoCoNation patrons for boosting the server. Please consider joining Discord and visiting the welcome section to read these bios in full and see what the community has to offer. Just go to discord.thecoconation.com.
See you on Discord.
When you want the latest in TRS-80, Tandy, Dragon, MC10, and all of their hardware cousins, no matter what it takes, or where news breaks from around the world to your nation. The CoCoNation News with L Curtis Boyle.
Okay, so first thing I'll do is I'll catch us up on the shows since we've had a few finished now, and I've actually added a new one. So the first one, of course, is the Bay Area San Francisco Tandy Assembly Meetup. This is the second time I'm doing it. And this is actually June 15th from 1 to 5 p.m. at the San Francisco State University. As shown on here, there's an online Assembly Meetup sign-up sheet you go to get officially led into the event. And they have the special guest Bill Hogue of Big Five Software, one of Nick's favorite authors of games actually on Big Five. And of course, he later on went to work on the Ataris and other things as well.
So
So
that
you can
makes
actually go ask him. Sorry?
So that makes 3 events on the same weekend.
Yeah, sucks, doesn't it?
Well, at least they're in different parts of the country.
That's true. This one's on the West Coast, one's in West Virginia, and one's in Dallas, Texas. So
Take me home, country roads.
yeah. And as Mark just mentioned, here's the second one on the same weekend. So this is Boat Fest, the third annual in Hurricane, West Virginia at the Social Event Space, a new venue from last year. We've talked about it numerous times on the show, but it's new. It's generally more game-oriented, multiple systems all over the place, hosted by Brent, Aaron, and Boat, alias John Schaller of the Amigos YouTube channel. And there's people that fly in from all over the world in this. We get people from Europe and stuff coming to this one, and Australia, etc. So good international flavor. Usually we get a few international machines that we probably never saw much of in North America. There's like little game competitions. There's a little bit of repairs and stuff going on. Frank from Retro Rewind, who sponsors CoCo Fest, also sponsors this show. And he'll be there as well. And also the same weekend again, and this is one, I think I'm going to go to this one next year instead of Boat Fest, because I do want to try to meet some of the Tandy people. Excuse me. So VCF Southwest, June 14th to 16th at the Davidson Gundy Alumni Center at the University of Texas at Dallas. This is one that Brendan Donahue going to be attending. There's multiple people that we know from the show that are going to be presenting there. Boise Pete's going to be presenting some stuff related to OS9. Jeff Wires from Chronological Gaming is going to be doing a seminar there as well, talking about his channel and going through every single video game ever made in chronological order on every platform. And he's been doing good coverage of the Coco and the Dragon as well at this point. He's speaking there as well. It sounds like there's going to be more presenters there this year. There's also the special Tandy Assembly meetup, where a lot of the people that worked at Tandy, because that's where they were situated, was in Fort Worth, will be there. And they're actually getting a special gathering, I believe, on Saturday evening. So if you want to join that too. I know Mark Siegel's mentioned last week that he's already got his ticket and he's ready to go. So that'll be one of the guys from Tandy. But you also get people like Jerry Heap and a bunch of others there too. So that's a fun.
I will be in attendance as well.
You will. Oh, if you can, Mark, if you get to the Tandy's, this Tandy group meeting on Sunday or Saturday, if you want to ask them if they'd be willing to do some interviews next year, because I'm going to try to make it down and do that. I don't know if you'd be able to make it. It's probably too far ahead for you to tell, or you can leave.
That just should be. I'm going to try to make.
I'm not sure.
I'm going to try to make that one, being a former Tandy employee myself.
Cool.
Well, there you go. Cool. Yeah, because I definitely, there's enough people in that area I would like to interview that there's no way I could do it in the weekend. But if Ken's able to make it, I think his recording hardware that he bought for the Bob Kilgus interview actually worked really well. I just have to learn not to lean down and speak into the mic, because I kind of blew it out in part 3 and part 4. My apologies to anybody's ears that listened to that. But now that I know that, I will.
Yeah, you suck.
I do. That's why. Hey, can you imagine what would happen if I recorded it myself? But this is one I definitely want to attend, because of some of those the people that helped create the TRS-80s, including the Coco back in the 70s, are there, and they're getting up there in years, like Robert. And you want to try to get these interviews done while you can, and have them all in a room so they can all answer questions. Would be awesome. So I definitely would try. So yeah, if you want to put a bug in their ear there, Mark, and ask if they would be
okay. If I can
up to doing
if I can identify anybody, sure.
I can get them yelling at each other all the same.
Just attend the Saturday meetup. I'm sure you'll get introduced to everybody. Mark can introduce you to all of them, because you know Mark.
I've not met him, but look forward to it.
Well, Mark Siegel, you know what he looks like. He's been on the show, so, and he'll know all the others.
But it's not 5 minutes ago, so.
I'll give you the episode number to rewatch the week before, so that you can rewatch and refamiliarize himself with his face.
I'll be looking at everybody's badge.
Hopefully they don't have aliases like Discord.
So when you bought your tickets, they asked you, what do you want to write on your badge?
Yeah, I'm going to use my real name like I always do. I'm not a fan of the alias thing. I kind of outgrew that.
Right.
On CompuServe CB chat in about 85, and I never did it since. So
I never could come up with an alias.
I don't even remember what my aliases were. I never used them on BBS or anything else. Well, I guess the very early BBS, like 83, 84 I did, but after that, no. Anyway, next up, the following weekend after that, so June's busy. There's 4 shows in June. is the and if this is up in Canada on the West Coast, and ironically enough, that's where Ken is, like right next door to this, and he's actually going to already be in Ontario by this point, so he won't be able to go.
I mean, you can't delay your departure for a couple of weeks.
That's up to Ken, but I think Ken has to go there because he's coming with us to Boat Fest the week before, though, and we're picking him up. So
Yeah, it's either this or Boat Fest. And I've already bought my ticket for Boat Fest.
yeah. I don't know if they move this one between years, like if it changes the dates much. Like I know Boat Fest moves around a little bit and CoCo Fest moves around a little bit, so maybe someday it'll time it so you can actually hit the one the week before you leave, and then go straight up to the other one. Anyway, June 22nd, 2024, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's a one-day event, and this is the Retro-Computing Expo at the Anvil Center in New Westminster, British Columbia, and this is put on by the Chilliwack Retro Computing Club. They've got guest speakers including George Phillips, the author of the TRS-80 GP emulator, which is now covering MC10 and CoCo 1 and 2s, and he's planning eventually to add CoCo 3, so it'll support, basically, it's an emulator for all the TRS-80 line, because it also does Model 1, 2, 3, 4, 4P, etc. They also have Brad Hodge, the Tech Time Traveler, and they also have a whole panel, including one of the original engineers, devoted to the Naboo that was recently rediscovered last year, and it's been kind of taking the retro world by storm. Quite a few people have been fiddling with that hardware, and it was way ahead of its time. It was like network gaming and stuff, back in the early to mid 80s type thing. Unfortunately, it was just sold in Canada briefly and didn't really take off, but that was too bad because it was pretty good. It kind of reminds me of the Play-Doh from a decade earlier. This is one I added that I didn't know about until recently. This is actually in Australia, so once again, Nick should have been here to give us any details he knows about it, but basically it's the Canberra Vintage Computer Exhibition in 2024 in Canberra, Australian Capital Territory. It's a one-day event, 10 a.m. till 3 p.m. at Radford College. It's got free parking and stuff. As I'll explain later, there's a bit of a talk about it if you guys are interested in it, or if you want to take a vacation in Australia right around that time. They're going to have a wide variety of machines on display. One of the people that was kind of helping with it is Ian Maverick, and if you watch the Trash Talk podcast, you've probably seen him because he's one of the hosts. He also usually attend the assembly, hosts the trivia game and the auction. So he's very active in the TRS-80 community. He's also active in the CoCo community. If you want to buy an RS-232 pack, he actually makes reproductions of those you can order, as an example. So other than the page here on Facebook itself, where you can get the details of where it is, the VCF people actually did an interview with 3 of the people that are helping organize this, including Ian. And this is an hour and 12 and a half minute thing you can find on the VCF page. You can get the actual link to the YouTube video itself here in the show notes on Discord. But they interview all 3 of them, start talking about stuff, and Ian mentions like his specialty is the TRS-80s. He's going to be bringing some stuff down. He's including the clones too. Because there's a whole bunch of like the Dick Smith 80 and stuff that are clones unique to Australia and New Zealand type thing. But looks like it would be a really good show. And they actually went through a spreadsheet. All the people that are doing presenters are bringing machines down. It lists the name, what decade it's from, and then what the machines are. And there's 115 different displays, ranging from like the 60s up till, the 2000s type thing. And there's a wide variety. There's quite a few machines there I've never heard of because they were, strictly local to the Australian, Asian, New Zealand markets. So there's a couple pretty cool looking things in there. And I don't know if anybody in Australia listening to this is going to be able to make it to that show. I know it's too far for Nick to travel, but maybe some of the other people like Danielle or something might be able to get there. I'd love to get a review of that. In fact, I think she's been to that one before, because this is not the first year it's been running. But one thing different this year is that VCF in the States is actually helping with the show somewhat. That's why they have this interview here with the VCF guy. I don't know if that means they have plans on taking VCF International into Australia and actually making an official VCF event at some point. That would be awesome if they did. But this probably is the first step if that is their eventual plan. And speaking of VCF, VCF West is also coming up, and that's August 2nd to 3rd at the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, California, right in the Silicon Valley area. As I mentioned in previous shows, this year they are a full partner with the museum, so that a single admission price will get you both access to the entire museum and all of its retro computer exhibits, going all the way back to mainframes, and VCF as well included on that ticket, so you can actually do both. we've had people there before. Mark Overhol's been there. Michael Furman's been there before. So we've had CoCo representation. I don't know if anybody's officially doing CoCo representation this year. Hopefully somebody is. But that's another one I'd like to make it out to eventually at some point. And then, of course, there's the big kahuna after that, which is VCF Midwest in their new larger venue at the Renaissance Schaumburg Convention Center in Schaumburg, Illinois. The main primary hotel's already sold out, the secondary, and I think even the third hotel sold out, but there's a ton of hotels in that area for conventions, so you'll be able to find something fairly close. This is September 7th to 8th. September 6th is reserved for vendors to set up. They're expecting attendance of around 1,500 to 2,000, last I heard. And this has got a wide variety of absolutely everything. And all the big names usually go to this one. It's the biggest retro computer show in the world, as far as I know. If anybody can correct me in case Germany has something bigger or something like that. But I don't believe they do. And I think several people on the panel are going. I believe is going to this one. Henry, are you going to this one?
I don't know if my schedule is going to allow for it yet. I've got my nephew who's getting married that month, and I can't remember what Sunday of the month that is.
So as long as he honeymoons at VCF Midwest, you should be okay, right?
Well, it's not about. He's not having the venue's unfortunately not in Chicago. The venue's here. So
you just have to get him to move it, and then you'll be okay.
Get him to move the venue to Glen Allen, Illinois, and yeah, it'd be fine. But all this moving things around could very well be moot because it may not be on his wedding. So as long as I'm not missing my nephew's wedding by going to VCF Midwest, I should be going to VCF Midwest.
Okay, cool. And Rick Hewlin, you're actually not far from there. Have you been to VCF Midwest before?
I have not. I'm going to try to make it for at least a day trip this year. So
yeah, I mean, I know it's too much. Like the exhibits are just insane there, so I wouldn't bother exhibiting the first try. Plus, the first time, I think you go from what Ken said. There's so much to see. You want to you want to just attend. You don't want to have to sit at your booth. Now, Mark B, are you going to this one too, or
no?
Okay,
but I think I saw Sloopy's name scroll across the bottom there.
Yeah, I think he's going. He usually goes. Taylor and Emery, I think this is the one show they are still going to this year.
Sloopy better be going. He's my roommate.
Oh, yeah, that would be a thing.
Well, I don't know if he pays for the room and can't make it and you get a room all to yourself. That's not bad.
Yeah, okay. I'll take that.
I'm planning on going. I usually go.
Oh, cool. So we'll have good CoCo representation there. Is anybody doing an actual booth or helping with a booth or knows of a booth? I think Jim Brain usually has one. I think Glenside's planning one this year.
Well, I've had a table. I've had booths before, but I'm still waiting to see how much that's going to cost before I make a decision on that.
Yep.
Yeah, because this year, because of the new venue, they have to start charging. And I think Jason was mentioning what, $50? I think they're looking at for the whole weekend.
I have not got any kind of number yet.
Can you remember? Because he was just it's not official, and they hadn't actually ironed it out fully yet. But
yeah,
I think
he was just thinking of some numbers and stuff. I don't know if he has settled on anything.
Yeah, because the venue definitely costs a lot more than the previous ones. Anyway, next up after that is Tandy Assembly, which is September 27th, 29th. So if you missed Ian Maverick in Canberra, Australia, you can meet him at this one instead. This is at the Courtyard by Marriott Springfield in Springfield, Ohio. And I think Boise's going to this one too, probably doing a presentation of some sort. They've got a list of some exhibitors already signed up for it, including some CoCo-oriented people. I don't think they've got too many speakers up yet, if any. Nope, still call up for it. So, but they still got months before that. So this is another one I will eventually make it to. It's a bad time of the year for me. August, September is the worst time of the year for work. That's one of the busiest. So that's usually why I don't make VCF Midwest and Tandy Assembly. But maybe if I semi-retire or retire early, maybe I can start making it a bit sooner rather than later. And then the last one to mention is the Retro Computer Festival 2024, which is November 9th and 10th at the Center for Computing History in Cambridge, England. This is the same place that the Dragon Meetup was held last year, and hopefully will be this year as well. And this is kind of the UK's version of VCF. It covers all the platforms, all the retro stuff. There's stuff hands-on you can play with. the actual Center of Computing History, just like the one in California. You've got this whole museum devoted to retro as well. So you get to see all that in addition to everything that everybody else is bringing in, which covers a bit more of the big iron stuff. And this is another one, you know, when I get a chance, I definitely want to go attend this. Actually, I want to attend all of them, let's be honest, at some point. And that's all the ones I've got for now. So that's your Retro Festival Roundup. And then after that, Ken, do you want me to do the Game On news first, or do you want me to do regular news first? I'll let you decide.
Stop interrupting my lunch.
There's your answer.
Go with the Game On news first. That's the
Game
most
On news
important.
first. Okay. Okay, let me switch the window. I'll let you guys read the title. One of you want to read it out loud for audio listeners while I get my notes ready?
I plan to cheat through all levels of Sailor Man, but
That was a good tease. So this is Coco Town, who's of course been doing his assembly language series of his Moon Patrol game that he resurrected, that he started in high school. Didn't know enough about machine language to get it running, so he dropped it and he picked it up, you know, a year or so ago. And all the new techniques he's learned since then, including the ones he's just learned the last years he's been going through this. But he decided to do something a little bit different this time. This has absolutely nothing to do with his semi-language programming series. It has nothing to do with his retro game that he's, you know, implementing right now. But this is, he actually went through and he watched, as Jason talked about, I believe in the pre-show, the fact that we interviewed Chris Latham, the author of Dancing Devil for the Coco and Donkey King / The King and Sailor Man. When we did the interview with him years and years ago, he had mentioned that there's a cheat mode in Sailor Man that's actually still in there. There's a key sequence you can hit to get to it. And basically what it does is it means that any collision detection with the player is gone. So you no longer can get run over by Bluto / Brutus or, you know, fat guy eating, you know, what do they call him in the documentation? Some weird thing. That's one of my favorite parts of the documentation, actually. But everything, sea hags throwing bottles at you, everything, and nothing hits you. But he still managed to die repeatedly, and he still couldn't finish the 3 levels, even with the cheat enabled. Which was, you know, as soon as I saw him play the first time he died, I knew exactly what happened because I played Sailor Man a fair bit, so I kind of know the rules of the game. For you game players among the audience here on the panel, how many of you know or have seen this video and know why he was dying before it got to the end, if any? I'm thinking Ken might, if he's not too busy chewing on a sandwich. I was hoping Nick would be here because I'm pretty sure he would have known.
I haven't seen the video, so.
Okay.
Was he running out of time?
Sort of. There's no timer specifically in the game.
Wasn't there?
Nope. Yeah, I'll play the intro and give you a little bit of... Sailor Man had other ideas for me. I like his little presentation here. He's the actual gameplay screen on the left, but he has a lot of the popular characters and sprites on the right.
Hello, Brutus, or Bluto, depending on which year of Popeye you're from. I'm just trying to get my hearts.
But you know, it's like the bottles being thrown at him and stuff, like they don't affect him. So the cheat mode basically disables all of that. You still can get the Spanish, or sorry, collared greens with S for collared, as the instructions say. You can still punch Brutus and he'll fly around and fall in the water. Let's see if I can get a fast forward a little bit here.
I didn't even know it had a cheat mode.
Hey, Nick, you're awake. Were your ears burning from our trashing your rogue review?
These stairs are hard.
He's got one heart left. And then he suddenly died. And he goes, what? On the right-hand side of the screen. So I'm going to back it up just a little bit here. A little bit more net. Can you see the? Let me just move this a little bit further. Can you see the problem as to why he died? With a cheat mode enabled, where nothing can hit you.
The heart is sinking, which is basically the timer.
Correct.
Oh. Well,
if you let a heart or a musical note or whatever, depending which level you're on, sit on the bottom, it'll start blinking, and then after a certain amount of time, it kills the player. So you're not supposed to leave him lying around, and he kept doing that, where he kept letting whatever fall to the bottom.
That's a standard rule in Popeye. It's in the arcade, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, as you know, Nick, most programmers, aren't avid game players.
Jim Rye also got it in the audience there.
Oh, he did? Okay, cool. Yeah, but that's exactly. As soon as I saw this, I was going, "What are you leaving that heart there?" Because after he picks up the one just above his head in the image we're looking at now, he only has one left. If you look in the upper left, the sailor house, there's only 2 spots. Once he grabs that one, he's got one left, and then he keeps wandering around hoping another heart will come down, totally ignoring the fact that the one on the bottom's been sitting there for a while and blinking, and then he just dies, which you'll see in a couple seconds here. It's already blinking to warn you, like you're just about out.
So you have to go down and pick it up then?
Yeah, before it's
you got
time up.
That's the version. That's in Popeye. That's their version of a timer.
Yeah, I don't call it a strict timer because each heart has its own 20 seconds or whatever the heck the time is before it'll go. So if you go grab the heart, then you're back to normal.
Exactly.
Right.
But he went through all 3 screens. He died on all 3 of them too, trying to do this. And he figured with the cheat mode to be able to actually see all 3 screens right through to the completion, and he still couldn't do it. Now, he did figure out afterwards after he read the directions here, which he kind of goes through here. But yeah, it was kind of fun seeing him doing something totally different, not working on assembly language or figuring out stack blasting routines or background sound using a H-sync interrupt and all this, but just trying to play a simple game of Sailor Man, pretty well exact clone of the arcade game. And having a cheat mode that Chris Latham himself told how to enable, and still managing to fail to complete the game. No offense, Dave.
Note, if the heart's musical notes or letters are allowed to lie at the bottom of the screen for too great a period of time, you will expire.
Yep, that's the part he noticed afterwards. But I think most of us that played Pop or Sailor Man back in the day had played the arcade game like Nick was mentioning and kind of knew that rule already. Ken mentioned as well. But obviously he was not one of those people. Or he forgot. Next up, this is a bit of interesting history here. So Richard Atkinson posted some photos of the manual and the disc set for an adventure game for the Dragon 64 called The Stone of Magician. Other than the title page and the little hand-drawn cover, though, this entire thing is in German. Now, this cover here actually says with 6-bit digital speech and sound, which is cool. But then everything else is in German. And this game was found in Germany. I think Torsten actually might have been the one who found it. And it's a 3-disc set, so it's a large game. And it goes through some of the icons, what they all mean. So it looks like a fairly modern game. And you'll see the copyright date's actually quite late. Copyright by Dragon Power Software, 1990/91. And you can see like the screen layout. This actually looks like a pretty decent modernized style game. Let's see if I can zoom that hand-drawn facsimile of this. Actually, I think it's a printout of the screen. But you see like you have a compass and you have like a view and you get a view of your character, etc. There's some extra space for other things as well. It looks like a really good game. It looks like a fairly decent size one. Requires a 64K Dragon. Will not work on a stock Dragon 32 unless you upgrade 64K first. But the fact that it's written entirely in German, except for the cover page is written in English, and some of the people that are in the Dragon group on Facebook that live in the UK have never heard of this game, I'd be really interested to hear the history behind it, because it looks like it was sold in Germany, maybe never got really sold or never got advertised or something in the UK. I'm not sure what's going on here.
Am I the one that finds it interesting that the cover is like the programmer's hand-drawn notes or something, but then everything else is sort of professionally printed and typeset and laid out much nicer? Who wrote it and how did it get published by someone who has, I mean, obviously it was 2 different people. This is what the programmer did. And then you start with the next page. This is what the typesetter did with the German manual for it.
Yeah, and just looking at the artwork, like these three here on the cover, these are screen dumps in the actual game. So you got like a shoreline here. You've got I don't know, the inside of a temple or something with two doors on the side. You got this like collapsed barn. Like the graphics in the game actually look really good, and the fact they filled up 3 discs with this looks like a game I would try. I definitely don't have in my archive because I didn't know it existed.
I just think the cover's funny because it's obviously like the original cover the artist drew while it was,
And the copyright's in English.
But then everything else here is very well done, and it's all typeset and
with a special font and stuff too. Like they went all out.
Yeah,
Even the
so
discs look well done.
It's like, okay, where did it come from? Because obviously it existed before this.
Oh, 1990.
Yeah, 1991.
Okay, so you were still having issues with doing any type of reasonable computer drawings at that point in time.
Yes, sir.
That looks like that's a fairly standard looking. All those fonts that are in there are like, those are bitstream fonts, real easy. Those could be default fonts, with the exception of your grandma that's sitting right here, or microgramma, whatever you want to call it. I also known as the Star Trek font. But the images, that would take a lot. This typesetting was cheap because you could do it at DTP. The rest of it, like what you did on the cover, you couldn't do it DTP. You couldn't do it on the cheap.
Well, that's why it was,
Everything else you can do on the cheap.
That's why it was all done with tacky back on a sheet of paper and Xerox. But
yeah, exactly.
At any rate, since this was one that even the people in the UK had never heard of before, they said, no, we don't have that in the archive. So it's going to be archived now. The manual, of course, you can pretty well read most of it here. We need to get it translated or see if somebody has the English version.
Where is the English version? Yeah.
Yeah, because it looks like it was started in English, judging by the cover and the copyright.
And then
this was redone, retypeset basically for the German market. But the people in the UK don't have any clue about this game. So that's, and you'll notice like I got the address here is in Germany. The other, I guess, option is that somebody from the UK wrote it and then moved to Germany and sold it there. That possibly is another option. Is what happened.
Is there
it looks like the author, if this is the author's name, is Alfred Noteg or something. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. My apologies.
Is there a video or a picture of?
There's nothing. Like he posted it up here to say, has anybody seen this? Like, should I archive this? Or is it already archived in English? And everybody was going, never heard of this game. Looks pretty fascinating. Can you put it up? So I think he's in the midst of scanning the discs and creating disc images and stuff. So I'll try to grab it off of the Dragon archive. And then if I have to do a conversion to get around the CoCo, I might work on that. Because I want to see what this game looks like.
I bet the K is silent.
Nick, then Mark.
1990, 91 is a pretty late period for the CoCo. So
yeah, that's just when Tandy was canceling the CoCo 3 was in 91.
Yeah, but this is a CoCo 1 and 2 game.
Yeah, basically Dragon. 64K. Yeah.
So yeah, that's even weirder. That at that time there was these sort of CoCo Dragon games coming out.
There's a few. I mean, Stuart Orchard and a few others were publishing games 89, 90, 91. But yeah, it was getting pretty rare by then. Mark, what did you say?
I was thinking that the K is probably silent. But in the chat, 60 is saying Alfred K wrote other stuff we've seen.
Oh, okay. 60. What other games or programs had Alfred written? And I'm assuming he must have been bilingual then.
And then he said something about the author replied to that post.
Oh, I didn't know that. That must have happened since I last looked at it. So let's take a look.
Oh, here we go.
Oops, I went top on all.
There he is. Top comment there.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Adrian. Oh, here he is. Yeah. So for those audio listeners, he says, hi all, I am the writer of the game. The game is a full mouse controlled game with 1-bit digitized speech and sound. A friend was developed this digitizer and I wrote the software for this hardware. So it required hardware, it sounds like. Or unless he just means 1-bit
for the Dragon.
Yeah. When anyone wants a copy, then let me know.
Yes,
and then
please.
He's got a whack load of replies.
Sweet.
And they're talking about putting on the Dragon archive. And Alfred replies, okay, I will do my best. I think it takes a while. In this archive, you will find my other games, for example, Wriggle, Quinky in the Caves of Doom, and some other titles. I don't think I've seen any of those. Oh, cool. It looks like the Dragon community's got that under control. So once they're all up there, I'm definitely going to go grab a few and try it in Extra and see if I can convert it over the Coco.
Nice.
That's the type of stuff I love finding, though. Finding either a game that has been missing, we've seen ads for, or a game we didn't know existed, period. And then it's an extravagant game like this, where it's like a 3-disc graphical adventure game, mouse-driven, for the Dragons. So that's awesome. Speaking of lost games found again, Rick Adams, of course, did a version of OmniStar based on his notes that he had found for a game that he was doing back in the 80s, and he did a Coco 3 version, which he released a few years back. Well, he found the printout of the original version. Now, the original version was never finished, but there was enough there to actually get it playing enough that you could see what it looks like. And there were some problems. The printer would occasionally get stuck and print lines over top of each other, just 2 pixels up, so it's all just a cascaded mess. So we had Grant Blado and a few others helping him figure out what the missing lines were. I think Deke in our Discord chat was helping with that as well. So now he's actually got it up and running, and he's got it so you can actually see some actual screenshots of what the original version of OmniStar was supposed to be. That game was going to be a much more expanded from what the actual OmniStar he released in the Coco 3 was. But it sounds like Rick at this point just wanted to get it running enough to see where he was going with it, because he couldn't really remember, but has no ambition to finish the game off at this point. I don't know if somebody else wants to pick that up and kind of run with it and maybe finish it off, from his original spec. But it's interesting to see what the original version would have looked like way back then. Like, this part still looks roughly the same. That's kind of the map of your nodes, etc., as the Coco 3 version. But then he's got, his custom layout of the screen stuff. I think this is a bit different than what eventually happened in the Coco 3 version. And for those wondering what the printout looked like, that's what they had to try to interpret to figure out what the heck all this was, because the printer kind of got stuck. Started printing everything over top of each other, but enough shifted you can kind of make out stuff. And I think if I remember, this one was in the line draw routine. They actually did manage to get it working. So, but there's a couple spots the printer where this happened. So that's a bit of an interesting historical tidbit from Rick. And I wouldn't mind seeing, because this one, unlike the one he released a couple years ago, would run on a Coco 1 or 2. Or a Dragon 3264, probably, maybe 64. I can't remember if it takes 64K, but it did not require Coco 3, which would have expanded the market for it quite a bit. But like I said, it sounds like Rick himself has no drive to actually finish it at this point, but he does have some of his original notes. He does have this code that works up to this point, and he's done a few other screenshots as he was getting it working. And if somebody wants to tackle finishing it, there you go. Next up, Xpertek, which is the Portuguese site, did another Coco 2 on his Amber Monitor gameplay video, this time covering Tandy's Tennis, which is programmed by the image producers, though we're not sure which one, because nobody could remember when we did the interview. And they had a bunch of other programmers there. So I don't know if any of you have played this. It's actually not a bad little tennis game. It's not, earth-shattering or anything, but it's got a 3D perspective. It's got 2 different, play modes, beginner and expert. One of them, you just run in front of the ball, and as long as you make contact, you hit it. And the other one, you actually have to hit the button and time it properly. You get to learn how to move the player in a certain direction. You get the ball to go in a different direction. This is honestly a lot more fun playing head-to-head with 2 real people versus against the computer, but it does let you play it as a 1-player game as well. I'll just play a little clip in case you guys haven't seen it. Of course, the colors will be a bit off here because this is an Amber Monitor. But this one actually doesn't look bad on a monochrome style screen. Like some of the other games we've seen recently, you can't see, like Puyan we showed last week. You can't even see half the background.
Portuguese Amber doesn't always translate, right?
Nope. It's on a real Coco 2, though. He's using real hardware, no emulator or MIST or anything like that here. That's kind of fun watching him go through it, because he's got some third party, he's got some Tandy stuff. Next up on YouTube, we have Nostalgia Vault. That's the name of the channel. And he does a bunch of retro game plays for a variety of retro machines. We covered him before in a few Coco games. This last week, he decided to cover Ruptus as one of the Indie Feudal games, and he played both the Coco 2 version, Coco 1/2 version, and the Coco 3 version. And this is kind of loosely based on Bosconian, kind of like Draconian on the Coco is. And both of them are not exact clones. There's definitely some differences from the arcade game. And in my personal case, I think Draconian actually is a better game than the original arcade game. It's got more stuff to do in it that makes it more fun for me anyway. This one has a bit of a difference because you've got shields and stuff blocking things that you have to try to shoot to get out of the way to get to the actual main large things. It's pretty decent. The Coco 3 version got a fairly good variety of color, etc. It's tile based as all the Inifito engine games are. And I'm trying to remember, Ken, did we play this one on the Game On Challenge? I know we played some of the Inifito, but I couldn't remember if this is one of them. I think we did. But...
Yep, we played this one.
Okay. And I know
we also played the
had...
MC10 version.
Oh, right, yeah. And I think at last year's Boat Fest, we played the Model 100 version on Joshua's Model 100. And I was quite surprised how well that played.
Yeah. I think it was this one.
Yeah. So if you're into general retro gaming, he's got a lot of cool stuff. He's even got here, you can see Cracky, which is another Inifito style game that they're playing on the Commodore Plus, if you haven't seen the Commodore Plus version. So you can actually compare some of the different platforms playing the same games. But tons. He's got Game Boy, he's got all kinds of Nintendos, etc. Next up, the you Dragon people in the audience on our chat. I need some help on this one. I'd never heard of this one before either. So this is a channel called Attempts, a gaming channel by LRU. And we've covered some of his stuff before. So he keeps doing submissions to some of the websites to do official high scores in a variety of games for all kinds of platforms, arcades, etc. In this case, he's playing a Dragon game specifically called S.A.S, which stands for Special Air Service. This was for the Dragon 32 or 64. From what I can tell, it's kind of a semi-real-time war strategy style thing, like say VC by Avalon Hill. But it seems to be written mostly in BASIC with some machine language sound effects, so you get some real explosions and stuff. And other than that, I don't know too much about the game. I was wondering if anybody in the chat that is from the UK may have played this one before. I'll play this. It's a video. It's just under 2 minutes. I'll play the whole thing because it's probably going to be new to most of us. And you can kind of hear some of the sound effects and you can see some of the gameplay. Like this all sounds like basic sound commands or play commands and standard get put buffers. And it looks like you're placing things or something. I'm not sure. Actually, maybe I won't play the whole thing. I'll get further along. So I think the red guy here is the player. I think this is supposed to simulate a gunfight. I'm not sure. But these are definitely machine language sound effects here. These are not play statements. And there's a bar growing on the bottom. I'm not sure if that's a timer bar or what it is.
I'm confused.
It's such a weird mix of like sound and play commands along with some digitized, not digitized, but machine language sound effects though. That's the thing that struck me as the most bizarre. Like, if you're doing machine language sound effects already, why not make them all that way instead of throwing in some like play and sound commands?
Right.
Okay, we do have an answer from Sixie, Kieran, author of Xor and Dungeons, amongst many other things. And he says Peaksoft Game, so that's the name of the company, which I did not know, was advertised quite a lot, but I've never played it. Well, at least now that I know the publisher, I mean, maybe look it up the instructions that are on the archive. But I just like when I first started ringing, I saw like a bit of a clip of the main gameplay. It looks like, oh, this is just a slow basic game. It's almost looked like one of those escape style games or something. But then I started hearing some of the sound effects later on. Wait a sec, this actually got some decent sound effects in it. So they did a bit of extra effort. And I don't know if it's a 1-player game or a 2-player game. I can't tell if that's 2 players, the red and the yellow character, if that's a computer versus the player, or if it has options for both. So I'll have to do some more research on that. But yeah, there's a lot of Dragon software, and we've covered 2 on today's show so far that we never got on the Coco. So the Coco's library will continue to expand as long as we start finding these and doing any minor changes or changes that are required to get it running the Coco. So my games page will never be done, darn it.
Cool.
Okay, now I'm going to switch over to the main news. And okay, so first up, we've got Vintage Geek Museum that Ken and I visited last year. And this one, I think, will be interesting to a lot of you because this is talking about the plug and power controllers from Tandy Radio Shack. Now, how many people on the panel here actually used these back in the day?
Oh, I had them all over the house.
Okay, Henry put his hand up. Rick put his hand up. Mark, you never did?
No, I didn't. I've seen them, but I hadn't used them.
I still got some. Anyone want to?
It got to the point where I actually forgot how to use normal light switches because all the switches in our house were buttons.
Had little buttons. Yep. I still have some. Anyone want one?
So rather than me play the whole video where you actually goes through exactly what it does and stuff, I was going to just show a couple of video highlights here. Do one of you two want to explain exactly what this is and what it does? I know it's based on the X10 spec, which is actually quite old from the late 60s, I guess.
Right. And
it's an X10 clone. The two are intercompatible, if I remember correctly. Is that correct, Rick?
Correct. And the Tandy value add was it had the timer that you could program from your CoCo 2 so that the timer could continue to do your scheduled events when the computer wasn't on, or you could fire up the computer and just kind of willy-nilly turn things on and off. So it kind of gave you a bridge between having to program everything manually with some kind of bedside timer device and
if I recall correctly, I think I remember an article by Steve Ciarcia in Byte, and I think it wasn't his Circuit Seller one, where he was talking about how he had used this system along with some other things that he plugged in for home automation. I can't remember what computer he based it off of, but it ran the X10. And it didn't catch him when he was trying to get in an emergency, and he was trying to figure out the bugs, and it was so funny when I read it. But that's years ago now.
Well, X10's problem was always no feedback. You just issued a command and hope the heck it worked. Yeah. So what usually happened is they would, issue the command 18 times and surely one of them worked. And so it made it kind of slow and cumbersome. But it worked well enough and it's still around and you can still buy the stuff. It's cheap. So to this day, X10's still kind of kicking around at the bottom end of the smart home. It goes through power. There's adapters to turn it into Wi-Fi and send it to another building and stuff now.
Yeah, because it actually went through the power grid in your house, didn't it?
Yeah, it was over the AC line. And in America, you have the issue of the split 220 volt or 240 volt line. So it's theoretically possible to be on the other side of the split where X10 doesn't work unless you install a special bridge, except most houses, the other side's on the lights and stuff, so it doesn't come up. It's complicated why it's not a good idea, but it still works.
Okay, because there's a couple of things that I'll show a little bit of the clips here shortly. I'll even play his little intro just so you can kind of get a feel for it from how he's presenting it. He runs it on the CoCo here. And one question I want to ask you, Rick, because I don't know if Henry, I don't believe you were at a CoCo 3 back in the day, right?
No, not really.
Did it work on the CoCo 3, Rick?
The semi-graphics mode in the programming didn't work.
Okay, but the program would run if you could see what the heck it was doing.
There was a program that someone wrote so that you could program the thing from your CoCo 3, but you didn't have the semi-graphics and the little, click the lamp and drop it here and, that kind of.
Yeah, because that was one thing I found fascinating. I've never seen the interface board before this video. I've just seen the carts and the little switch box thing with the 8 buttons or whatever. I've never actually seen it actually up and running. And it was more advanced than I thought it was. Like you said, you can drag like a lamp to place it over here and click on it to turn the lamp on and off, like all in a GUI style interface in semi-graphics.
And then you can tell your Radio Shack controller, which it had 4 manual buttons, but it had a lot more internal channels. So you could tell it, do this and that, and connect this, that, other thing. It was pretty complicated for its day.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like it's more advanced than I thought it would have been. So I'll play a little intro just so you people have not seen the Vintage Geek channel before. By the way, if you're in Knoxville, Tennessee, this is an actual museum you can go into. You pre-book an appointment. You get hands-on with everything. There's a ton of computers set up. You can pull software off the shelf and put it into the appropriate PC and run it and try it. Very interactive, and Aaron Ishmael, the head guy here that you're seeing on the screen, is a really friendly guy. He's great, knows his stuff. He grew up with the Coco. That was his first major machine too, so he's got a kind of a kindred spirit with us. Ken and I had a great time interviewing him, and he interviewed us.
If you wanted to remotely turn on a lamp somewhere in your house, you could do that a number of different ways. Alexa, Google, whatever device you might have. But how was that accomplished back in the 1980s? Today we're going to find out on Vintage Geek.
That kind of gives you a preview of it, and so we can find some of the... So there's kind of a zoom up of the main one. You got 4 switches for on and 4 switches for off. So this particular one controls up to 4 different devices at once. And you can control appliances or lights. Now, did it work on bigger appliances too, Rick? Like say
yes,
an oven or
it all
something?
depended on your receiver, and this manually controls 4 devices, which you can assign amongst multiple home codes and device codes. This thing controls a lot more than it has manual buttons for. That's why you need the Coco to program it. To
Didn't that thing have like 64 possibilities or something, or 256?
It's pretty complicated. Yeah, the whole X10 thing was you had house codes and device codes, so you could suction things off. And this did that multiply. You could pick what these 4 buttons did, so they weren't just locked to one specific spot. But that's where the Coco 2 came in. You had to do all that on your Coco so that the stupid thing would. Otherwise, this all became like code A, devices 1 through 4, if you just stuck it in the wall. And
Yeah, like here's they're showing the box of the controller, and it even shows the color computer specifically hooked up to it. And then it has like a command center, which is some big box. I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, but X10 was a whole cooperative protocol, so.
And it shows you like controlling lamps or TV or a wall switch.
Oh, when you got hard power ons, TVs work fine.
Exactly. Not so much today.
And here, I think this is a more modern version, but this is appliance module, or is this the same one's Tandy sold?
This is the things you would use.
Yep.
With that, and here are all the different codes you can throw in to get your many different. Like I say, the buttons unprogrammed or code or house A units 1 through 4, but you could make those buttons do any one of these various things and have them all, timer controlled and so forth. So you could play with Powerhouse a long time. But this is like the straight up, your first 4 devices, there's no need to change anything. Just, there you go.
And here's their test for doing it, where they controlled a few things. Coco 2, the actual cartridge with the ROM actually has all this code in it.
See, now what I find funny about this, like it talks about the TV, or you show it's hooking up the TV. Our primary TV when I was growing up as a kid, when Dad built it, it did not have a hard power on. It had a soft power on. You pressed a button to turn it on. You didn't flip a switch. Yeah. It was one of them Bell and Howell things with all the electronic gizmos.
All right. So, some kind of dang cool remote too, didn't it?
It was an ultrasonic remote too. Yeah, ultrasonic. And I could detect every single pitch that thing put out.
Right. Dad, quit playing with the remote.
Exactly.
And when you get older, you can't hear those high pitches. You don't have
No, it doesn't bother me at all.
Thank
No.
God!
Flybacks are great.
Just, dude, do you realize how nice it is to not hear a flyback transformer anymore?
Exactly. 80-year-old TV, not a problem. Ain't no squeal here.
See, I didn't mind having that ability because then I could tell if my brother was sneaking onto my computer when my BBS was running to play a game.
You hear the monitor
because I'd have the
spin
screen
out,
off. I
"Hey."
suddenly hear the screen go on in another room, and hey, Kevin, get out of there. So for those who can't see the screen, this is part of the software of the ROM pack that came with it, and it says plug in power, and it's got little high semi-graphics mode outlines and stuff. Operation of this program only requires the use of the 4 arrow keys and the enter key. Q quits returns to the program to this screen without any loss of data, and then you can choose to operate or install. Now, what does install exactly do? Is that just setting up what? Or
well, no, you set everything up on the computer and then you install it onto that controller so you can then turn the computer off and whatever you set up is there.
Oh, so that's actually setting up. Okay, gotcha. And you can set your actual time. Now, this is what I found interesting. Like, this is the layout of the screen here. And Rick, you can probably explain this a little bit better, but you can drag and move stuff around. I'm not sure what the purple boxes are.
You have these cells and you drag and drop different things. It's just an early menu system. So you drop a TV.
But graphical.
Yeah, this is like, imagine, well, remember Microsoft Bob? Here we are. This is Bob. You stick your TV in front of you
really
on the living
much
room.
better, I'll tell you what.
It didn't look much better. You're right. But yeah, you drop the TV in front of your living room. You don't have to worry about what code it is or anything. You just scroll to the living room. There's your TV. Do what you need to do with it.
Yeah. And here's an example of the screen where you're selecting the rooms, and it's got some ones set up. I don't know if you set these up yourself or has some defaults, but you have the spare room, the front room, the back room, the kitchen, the living room, the dining room, bedroom 1, master bedroom, bedroom 2. And he actually has little graphics. And you can see like the master bedroom has like a 2-person bed, while bedroom 1 only has a 1-person bed, and they're different colors, all in high semi-graphics. So this actually looks pretty darn good, I think, for the time. It's, full 9 colors, if you count black as a color.
Right. Sadly, they did all this so they didn't have text on the control screen, which means it won't work on a Coco 3 at all because there is no text.
Yeah.
If it said bed 1, it would work just fine, but because it's a blue single wide bed, there's no way to do that on a Coco 3.
So is this what they consider a quote-unquote house, or is this a location within a house? Because you got the house and then you've got the actual, like the 2 settings.
The terminology is weird. I believe here they're actually using house to mean rooms, and then device to mean devices inside that room. So you have A through I letters, and then so many devices per letter is what it boils down to.
Okay. I'm going to play a little clip here so people can kind of see what the GUI, as it were, looked like with his commentary.
If I move this cursor around, which I can with the keys, I can basically move to different points of the room and be able to define different devices. So let's just delete the devices we have. Let's start from scratch here. Go ahead and place that TV first. So I'm going to go ahead and put that TV to the right of the couch. Now I'm guessing it's not going to let me put that on the wall, but let's find out. We can choose if it's a lamp or an appliance. In this case, we're going to use appliance for everything. So we've got some different appliances available here. This TV is a 13-inch Radio Shack, so I'm going to go with the smaller TV on this. It does not appear that the system will allow me to place a TV on the wall. What can I put on the wall? How about a custom device? Looks like it's defaulting to unit code 1, which makes sense. It's the first one, but we're not going to do that because 1 is our television. So let's assume that this position on the wall is where we want our Commodore sign. So I'm going to change this to code 2, set appliance module to code A2, enter to continue. So now we've got our Commodore sign on the wall in this illustration. Now let's see where we can put the television. We're going to have to put it in one of these 4 positions. So I'm going to put it to the right of the couch. Oh, now we've got the actual labels. Let me try to put that small TV back in. All right.
I think it has coffee machine as an option.
It's looking good. The screen seems to be facing the wrong direction. But, you can't have everything. For our chime, I want to put the chime outside. So let's see what we've got. I'm going to put the chime in the front. Can't tell if that's supposed to be a position we can use here. We can put it right next to the door. Great. This one's going to be custom because they don't actually have a chime showing here. And that would be unit code 3 for our chime. Set it to A3. Okay, great. All right, so we've got our chime on the front of the house. And where do we want to put our big Radio Shack sign? Of course, in the kitchen. All right, next unit code is 4. That should work. So now we've defined our 4 devices in the software. Now we're going to try to operate these devices using the program. So if I go into operate mode, first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the living room. I want to turn on that TV remotely. Maybe I just woke up and I'm thinking, really ought to let that analog CRT warm up a little bit before I head down the stairs. So let me use my Coco 2 that just happens to be next to the bed to control this and turn on the television. I'm going to go to choose the unit to operate, which will be right here at this A1, right on the TV. Now you can choose on, off, or skip here. I'm going to choose on, and then it's going to ask me, when do I want to do it? And this is where you would be able to set a schedule if you wanted to set the TV to turn on at certain times, but we just want to turn the TV on for right now. So let's give this a try and see if we can turn on our television using the plug-in power controller. After a bit of warm-up time, we have our television. All right, this is working well.
So he goes through it and demonstrates the other thing. He actually lights up the Commodore sign and the Radio Shack sign, etc. And you can kind of see the utility of it. And as Rick said, this is very much what the smart home nowadays is doing. But this is way back in the 80s type thing. And they took such an attention to detail in the semi-graphics, like the one where he was showing putting the chime on the outside front of the house. And there's like a full color semi-graphics car in the driveway type thing. Like they went all out on the interface too. So I was more impressed about this than I thought it would be. I didn't know too much about it. I knew you could turn stuff on and off, but I thought it was a pretty dumb system. But this is actually kind of perked my interest. This is actually a lot more. I'm perked. I said because you can control a coffee machine with this thing. Definitely it's got me a bit more interested than I would have been in the past here. So I don't know if that'll change anybody else's mind, but I thought it was kind of cool. I would like to see a Coco 3 interface.
For what it's worth, my current smart home stuff is Insteon, which is kind of obsolete itself, but it's X10 is one of the protocols it uses, and it will talk to X10 stuff just fine. So none of this is obsolete yet.
Now, for users that are in non-NTSC countries, like say the UK with PAL, etc., do you know if any of this stuff would work with that, or does it require special versions, or was X10 never made for those situations?
Honestly,
Henry
don't
or
know.
Rick would know.
Yeah, we need a European knowledge on this one because I'm dumb.
Well, Tandy never sold it in Australia, so it may not have been compatible.
Yeah, the 50 years because it was going through the power lines itself in your house. Yeah,
right. That's
we're
all
depending
very
on 60
specific.
years power, right?
That's pretty much specific on what you're allowed to do in the U.S. I expect. The power is way different other places.
Yeah, it might have been some legal thing too.
Yeah, I do know it was up here in Canada, but we're on the same grid as the States, so no problem there. I don't know. I just found this fascinating, and I was really impressed with the graphics they did for it, which explains why it doesn't work in a Coco 3, because it looks like it's using SemiGraphics 24, if
right,
maybe
right.
12, but I think it's 24. Like they're
12,
using
I
the
think.
full high res. And the graphics they drew are quite good. I was impressed.
Would you agree? It's very much like Microsoft Bob. They're really throwing it out there like the house interface and everything.
You see, I blotted Bob from my memory after the
it's not
it
a
came
great
out, so I don't
idea,
remember Bob at all.
But this is kind of where it started.
Yeah,
And
here's turning on the sign on and off.
this is probably where it should have stopped as well.
Here's that car. They even put like a rearview mirror and tail lights and a license plate on it.
Right. Hook up your next camera to position A. Huh.
I don't know. I was really impressed. I had not seen this before, but like I never really played with it. I saw the cartridge in the store. I saw the little appliance controller modules and going, I can get up and turn on lights. What do I need this for? And, now I'm kind of fascinated. I wouldn't mind doing a Coco 3 version. Now, how does it hook up to these controllers, Rick? Is it through like the serial port or a cassette port or the cartridge? I think it's just a straight ROM card.
There's a ROM card. The Coco version uses a cassette cable. There is also a serial version for other Tandies to go with other ROMs, I think. So basically you program it with the cassette cable and then it speaks over the wire. There's a 9-volt battery in the controller to keep everything remembered, which means there is a real-time clock. It's just you can't quite get to it from Coco usually.
Well, darn. I thought my Nitrous 9 problem was solved.
Right?
Anyway, definitely go check out the video if you're as fascinated by this as I am suddenly this time around. It's a really good video. Kind of goes through multiple examples and setting it up and running it, etc. Running it both with timed operations as well as immediate operations. And I'm impressed with the software interface. This is something I was not expecting. Like I said, I never saw it run. I just saw the hardware on sale. Never really looked at it. And in the past, I've even seen Mark Marlette selling it, at Coco Fest this year. He had a few of these. And kind of wish I bought one now, except I don't really have any Coco 1s and 2s left. I guess I have one Coco.
Right.
But it looks like a well-designed program. Now, is this something, do you remember if this was actually a Tandy program thing they did internally, or is this some third party that did it? Do you know, Rick or Henry? I've never seen the copyrighted splash screen, so.
I do not recall. I mean, since it was Tandy hardware, you would expect that they bankrolled the ROM pack, but I don't know who wrote it or anything.
Okay, I'm gonna have to do some research on that just for my own curiosity. Anyway, definitely go check it out. And like I said, if you're in Knoxville, Tennessee, check out the museum. It's a great museum. I'm sure Ken can add a few things about the museum itself, if he's not munching on lunch
or asleep.
Making coffee.
Well, we are in the news, so yeah, I guess it's kind of expected. Now he's going to have to get here, though, darn it, because this is his stuff.
Did I hear my name?
Yes. Do you want to talk about the last two parts and what they cover of the Robert Kilgus interview? Then I'll play a little clip or two from each.
Okay, so the last two parts of the Robert Kilgus interview start off. Part 3 starts off when he's first programming for the color computer. His first 4 games that he did, which were, Quasar Commander, Skiing, Dino Wars,
Color Cubes.
I didn't
Or is that the
do
fourth,
Color
maybe?
Cubes until part 4. It's the 4 that he was contracted to do before the color computer even came out. So
yeah, scrolling through. Yeah.
anyways,
So I'll just play oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it's quite fascinating to listen to a lot of the stuff that he talks about in there, about how he got the digitized sound for both Dino Wars and Skiing, and yeah, and how he I think this is the one where he talks about how he did a lot of the sound routines in a way that until recently we thought was a new thing, but it turns out
using
that
the
he-
H sync,
using the
overflowing
H-sync.
an H sync. Yeah.
Until I mean, we thought that was only recently discovered, but it turns out that back in
1980,
Robert Kilgus was doing it.
I know, because I called out both Nick and Simon on this during the interview. So
I got to congratulate both you guys on this interview series. It gets into that whole run-of-the-mill developer versus systems analyst kind of question where, this guy wasn't just crank out the code, but what's the best way to do this task?
It's also like most of the time when we talk to game developers, especially, it's usually like some teenage kid learns machine language and starts learning the machine and then starts programming these awesome games. And Robert's one of the few that came from a completely opposite side of the fence. He programmed mainframes for banks for 15 years before he ever got into the home computer market, because there was no home computer market.
Well, and you had to think about the problem and reduce it to the simplest path to the solution, because the computer wasn't going to just do it for you.
Yeah.
You couldn't just throw it out there and something will stick and we'll get done. You had to really, and he talks about that a lot, about what's the easiest way to do this task. How can I adapt it to the few resources I have? I'm impressed that y'all got it out of it.
Well, one thing that comes across in this 4-part interview is that I'm trying to allow him to fully explain technical questions, because part of our audience is fairly technical and wants to know this kind of stuff. But I'm also trying to make sure there's enough generalization stuff there too, that people that aren't into the super tech and want to learn machine language programming still find it interesting. The one thing I wish I had done is contacted Brian to send Ken a bunch of the hand drawings he did for some of these games, because he did diagrams of the Quasar commander ships and how they would scale, and how the skiing algorithm worked with some hand-drawn diagrams of doing, line of sight with hills and stuff like that. I wish I'd sent that over to him earlier to make it as part of this, but we can always do a follow-up later on with that kind of thing, especially once they're all scanned in. But hopefully the balance was good, that it was interesting to the technically minded people who don't want the fluff pieces on just playing games, or what they would consider to be fluff pieces, but also, enough for the people that are just game players, that you kind of learn the behind the scenes, like why is the game doing this way? Why didn't he do it this other way? Type thing. And he actually goes into pretty good explanations of all those. Yeah, I thought I'd play a little clip from the Dino Wars part, and then I'll play a little clip from the second one as well. Now, the next 2 games you did, and these were, I think, if I remember correctly, you programmed these in 1980, but I don't think they actually got released until early 81. Is that loud enough, or should I bump it up? This is Dino Wars and Skiing. Now,
A little
Dino
louder, I
Wars
think.
Kind of reminds me of Quasar Commander, because it's a lot of the scaling in real time. But now you've got a world that's wider than the screen, so the players can wander off, and eventually it wraps around, but there's another screen and a half or 2 screens or whatever in between. And you've got other things in space, in the space of cactuses you can interact and run into. So they're not just decoration, scale decoration. They're interactive physical objects. And you've got 2 players simultaneously. You've got digitized sound effects, which we'll get into the fun between you and your wife when setting those up. But it seems like, to me, it's based somewhat on the Quasar Commander for the scaling. I'm assuming you must use similar routines, but you came up with quite a different game. And I will mention, I've heard some of the old programmers that were around in the day, they thought Dino Wars was a bit beneath them, type of thing. Not for the programming wise, but just the gameplay. They thought that was a little bit beneath them, and they used to use those cartridges for projects, is what they sometimes would tell me. But I have met kids up until the modern day. Every single one loves that game, and they still do. I have one of my roommates. They have a son, Vince, and he played it. I think he was maybe 5 or 6 years old. Now he's used to PlayStation 3 level graphics these days. Didn't care. Dino Wars, he giggled out loud. He was just having a blast, hitting the button, hearing the roars and stuff like that. So I guess for Dino Wars, where did the concept come from of actually doing that? And then also the sound effects. Was this the first time you started really playing with digitized sound effects rather than just musical tones, etc.? And some of the sound effects that you have in that game, which is a very interesting story. I'd like to talk about that too.
Okay, well, the whole idea of it was it was going to be 2 players. I needed 2 things that I could render, and especially if I'm going to be scaling because of the distance from the camera, I needed to have a simple block pattern in memory. And it's a table of,
like the width of the head and the jaw and stuff, yeah.
And I had to have one that was with the tail outstretched, one with the tail curved in, and I had to have one with the mouth open and one with the mouth closed. And if I'm going to have sound, I want it to be meaningful, and I don't want a bleep, bleep, bloop, bloop kind of thing. I want some sound that sounds like something it's coming from. So I managed to put together a recording routine in memory. This is completely separate from the game, just something I run all by itself. And what I would do is I would let Peggy talk into a microphone while my little subroutine is counting until there is a reversal in the sound wave. It's positive, then it goes negative. Okay, there's that much time, it goes negative, then it comes back, there's that much time. And I would make a series of bytes in memory that represent the distance between each transition from negative to positive. And lo and behold, if there's a limit to how much I can put in memory because of,
Because you have to fit it on a ROM card. And 10 was pretty cheap on what size ROMs
I mean,
you could use.
even on my utility, there was...
right.
While I'm recording, I can only record for just a few seconds, and then, I've filled up memory with these ups and downs, and then I would start examining them and did a playback subroutine that would play them back exactly as shown with the same delay between each reversal, and then add a mathematical factor to it to increase or decrease the time scale, so that where it says it was 10 units down and then 10 units up, I could make it 5 units down and 5 units up, and lo and behold, whatever it was is at twice the pitch, a higher note. So I could have a sound hello, and it would come out hello, just by changing a factor in my subroutine. So basically, in order to get the sounds for the dinosaurs, I had my wife using the microphone and giving me some source information to work with. Okay, we need a growl. So she would growl into the microphone, stop, and I would go through and I would isolate the actual beginning and ending point of that growl and set up my playback routine so it would play that particular range of data that I stored. And then I would start playing around with the adjustment factors to change the pitch. And so her growl, what sounded like roar, would change the pitch and it would be roar, or change the pitch and it would be ah! All kinds of strange sounds would come out of there. Sometimes it would sound like a little yappy dog barking. Sometimes it would sound like a big whale out in the ocean, and the way it goes.
Anyway, you kind of get the idea there. So kind of goes in the whole background of writing his own routines to do the sound. It goes further in the story about his wife, and then they always wonder what their neighbors thought because they were laughing their asses off while doing all these pitch shift recordings and stuff like that with an open window in the summer. So they would hear, neighbors would be hearing all this roar and stuff like that coming out. So that was pretty funny. But yeah, he goes into a lot of technical details. He's also given us permission for all of his software, both on the Model 1 and on the CoCo, to be released. And Brian has got possession of printouts of some of the source code. There's also discs that hopefully we haven't had a chance to read them all yet. Hopefully the source code's intact. So we'll get commented source code from Robert himself when he wrote these, and he's actually got multiple versions of most of these. One trivia fact, for those of you who remember the launch title on the CoCo called Music, that was one of his. It's a 2-voice music player. That was originally going to be called Music Master, and that when he started programming in late 79, when he very first got the very first prototypes of the CoCo 1, which is actually a 4-board set you kind of had to hobble together. Wasn't just one circuit board at that point. And he's got, the history of, I had to fix this bug and fix this bug and add this new feature they wanted added, et cetera. So we're going to be getting a lot of that further history, like the more detailed stuff, but he does some broad strokes in some of that here. This is probably one of my favorite interviews we've ever done, on CoCoNation, CoCo Talk, or even before that. He's just a fascinating guy, sharp as a tack. The funny thing was, he did a mainframe programming for banks for 15 years, from 62, 63 till 78 when he got his first TRS-80. And he remembers all that stuff, no problem. He remembers almost all the details. He remembers all the original CoCo details here in his games. When he started doing the CoCo, serious apps like Scriptsit and Spectaculator and Graphic Pack, doesn't remember much of that because it was boring to do. He was just basically told, we need a graphics editing package. We need a spreadsheet. And he would do them, and he sold a fair bit of them, so he got paid fairly well, but he doesn't remember much of the details of those because he said it was boring. So he actually had more fun doing the game stuff. He found that more fascinating.
And I also have to add that when he's talking about skiing, he has one of the best quotes in this interview where he says that, talking about the digitized speech in skiing, that most of human speech is just random noise.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
You are correct, sir.
Yeah, and that's when he's talking about how to compress like an S sound, because it just sounds like white noise. And he did that, like he was writing like an S, because there's so many pitch shifts in it. An S actually takes a lot of room versus say like a D sound or something like a D. So the lower pitch stuff, and that doesn't vary that much, actually takes way less memory. And he was having trouble trying to get ready, get set, go, or the gunshot. So he actually he digitized some of the the little sound bites as raw digitization, but the S's and stuff would have made it too big to fit on the cart. And what he did there is he actually just did a white noise generator with a certain Fibonacci sequence or Fibonacci, I should say, sequence to actually generate white noise that sounded kind of like a sh or a s. And that's what he used to do those particular consonants, because he couldn't get them to fit on the cartridge otherwise. So it's actually a mix of real digitized and some white noise at different pitch shifts with different Fibonacci sequences applied. And that's how he gets the gunshot, the pole breaking when you hit a pole, the S part of set, just all kinds of little tricks he did just to fit this stupid thing on an 8K ROM card, because that's the biggest size that anybody let him use.
Nice.
And then on part 4, he goes through Color TRS DOS, which is something I definitely do want to follow up on once we get the source code and stuff here, because this is, I think, the only experience we ever saw with it was any of the programs he wrote for disk, like Disk Spectacular, Disk Scriptsit, Disk Graphic Pack, and Microsoft used it. And there's a whole story behind the fact that he gave this to Tandy without royalties, and he wanted people to use this because it's a mini DOS addition to the regular ROM calls, so you can actually deal with files, and also does a little bit of virtual programming where you can load in module chunks of a program to run. And he wanted this out there for the programmers to use without them having to pay royalties. They could just use it to speed up development and make a common way to do it. And he went through multiple versions. I think 1.2 through 1.7 is actually on some of the releases he did. But only Microsoft ever used it, and they used it on Disk Edtasm. And none of the other developers ever used this stuff. And Tandy didn't release it for the public, even though there was no charge from Robert. And that's something I would like to actually maybe get out there now with proper documentation, because that was not included in Edtasm, so that programmers, because one of the things, Nick, you can probably attest to this too, if you're dealing with file system in Disk Basic, it's a pain in the ass if you want to do just legal ROM calls, so it'll work on like an SDC and various other third-party controls and stuff, because now the only legal ROM calls you have are basically sector-based. So you have to figure out how directories work. You have to figure out how the granule table works and all this kind of thing. Whereas, he set it up to be more like an OS9 API call system where it's just file based. I want to create a file. I want to load a chunk from a file type thing. So I think it would be worthwhile to get that actually released as he originally intended it to be, with full documentation, so that people that want to write a game that it's doing a lot of disks, say a big ass adventure game or an RPG that fills an entire disk in ML versus a basic. And I think it would actually be quite helpful with some programmers where they don't have to figure all this stuff out themselves. And he developed this over several years. I mean, the bugs are already worked out. This is proven and running on multiple programs that he sold through Tandy, as well as Disketasm, which is written by Microsoft for Tandy. And I was going to just let him talk a little bit about Color TRS-DOS here, just so people kind of get an idea. Go ahead.
So this is actually what the Kilgus-DOS that was in EdTasm is all about. I've stared at that assembler for years.
Yeah, it doesn't show you any of that. It looks like it just pops up a real-time clock you can run in the corner. And
I wonder
program.
why the hell is this here in EdTasm?
Yeah.
And there's source in the back, but I couldn't figure it out. And so now we know there was a much better DOS available that just never actually got.
Yeah, if they'd included the full, like he's actually got multi-page documentation printed out. Brian Weezer's got it now. We'll get that scanned. Excellent. And he's got versions from 1.2 to 1.7. I know the printed out source code that Brian has. He's got 1.5, 1.6, and 1.7. It's even got REM statements in the source code to tell you what changed, what got added for each version. And yeah, it's pretty good. I'll play just a little clip here, not quite as long as the previous one, just to give you a little bit of it.
But this is where it gets a bit interesting on your history of working with virtual memory and stuff here, is that this is where you first did your TRS Color DOS, which you originally had spec'd out and sent to Van Chandler to, and this was something you actually asked him to do, was to say, I don't need any royalties in this. If you give me a flat fee, you can hand this out to all the other developers and they can use it. Because as you found out, as we've also found out, Microsoft Basic, Disk Extended Basic, absolutely sucks for assembly language programs if you want to use the legal calls. It's basically just sector read write. If you want to figure out the file system and directory structure, you have to do it all on your own. So you got kind of tired of that too, and you actually went and created a TRS-DOS that is file-oriented. It also has stuff like built-in help. You use REM statements to fill in stuff. But you also started working on your virtual memory and like you did all the complicated stuff you did on microfiles. You started moving it to the CoCo.
Well, it wasn't quite as sophisticated as microfiles.
No, not quite, but yeah.
Because it didn't allocate memory like microfiles. Microfiles allocated memory in 32-byte chunks. Every 256-byte block of data was managed by dividing it into 8 pieces, because 1 byte has 8 bits in it. So that tells me whether all of the 8 pieces of that block are available or not. So I could map available memory that way. That's why it ended up being 32 bytes per allocatable block. But on the color computer, it was rather using the concepts that I learned in commercial programming of structured programming, where you have a subroutine or a block of code, and most of what it does is done by subroutines. So you get a mother here, and you go to a daughter here, a daughter there, a daughter there, to do the various functions that this mother needs to be done. And sometimes the daughter does the same thing and has grandchildren beyond there. So it's a case of stacking. You get your main line, and there's the space above it is open. Okay, you start needing to call something else, you stack it on top of it. You need another one, you stack it on top of that. I mean, this one, if it calls something else, it stacks on top of that. And the main thing that my operating system per se did was managed to keep track of which ones are in memory, and as the caller lets go, then they start disappearing and the memory becomes available for the next block to call its subroutine.
That's a very, very brief description of the kind of the virtual memory system that's built into that TRS Color DOS, which of course we knew nothing about. And like if you've ever looked at the basic program loader, it's got a bunch of REM statements, and actually menus and stuff are based on the REMs. So you can actually create your own menus and stuff by editing the basic program. That's another thing that's not fully explained, that he did explain on the original documentation he sent to Van Chandler at Tandy. So we're going to work on getting the full documentation and the latest version out sometime this year, with as much sample code and stuff as we can find that he's got on all of his various disks, and there's a lot to go through. And of course, we'll release it with a version 1.7, the latest version. With I don't even know what's been added between them, but he's well documented, what he did and what he added. So we should be able to get all of it out there. But I'd like to see what some other people can do. But if you want to write a machine language like an RPG or let's say Rogue or something like that, and you want to run on a CoCo 1 and 2, you don't have much memory. The fact that he's got that whole subroutine package system set up so that it can tell, this is mapped in memory right now. You can just go run it. No, it's not. I got to bring it in from disk, and I'll ditch this other one that we haven't used for a while. Like all that's built into the Color TRS DOS. So it's kind of like a poor man's virtual memory. Of course, we don't have hardware interrupts to handle it properly like a real virtual memory system works, but close enough, I think, for this kind of thing. Anyway, some of my favorite interviews I've done is this one here. All right, next up, Aaron Newcomb, Retro Hack Shack on his secondary channel, Retro Hack Shack After Hours. Might have been inspired by our After Dark. I'm not sure. But anyway, he picked up a CoCo 1, and you can see here, it's a later model CoCo 1 because there's no RAM badge, and the Radio Shack logo is in the middle, not on the side, but it's obviously got a much later keyboard from a CoCo 2 middle to late model, which was perfectly fine. I think the F board, which is probably what this is, I think actually has the ribbon cable, so you don't have to do that little adapter doohickey to do the header connector. But he picked this one up off eBay, picked it up a while ago, and it's actually got a mod where it's got 3 RCA jack cables coming out of it. And, when I first saw that at first glance, I thought there was just 2. Well, okay, it's a composite mod. It's got, composite audio out, composite video out. No, it's got 3. So I, like him, I was wondering, well, what the heck is this third thing? Maybe this is something totally different. Is it stereo or something? And as it turns out, it's actually, you can do color composite out or monochrome composite out, tapped at 2 different spots. And the quality of the monochrome out is actually quite good. If you were doing word processing, this would have been pretty darn good. But he goes through the whole sleuthing out exactly what it is. He actually found an online schematic that pretty well matches exactly what the mod looks like. I'll just zoom up here. So you can kind of see that's the little board there. And he explains through that. And then he found the actual schematic that kind of explains this, what it's doing. And then he tests it. Now I'm going to play a part of the testing one just to give you a feel of what the difference is in the quality between the color composite signal coming out of the monochrome. And I could definitely see, switching between this for certain things. If you're running like Telewriter or something, I think the monochrome quality is good enough if your TV's at a fairly decent shape. 64 comm Telewriter is quite readable. You wouldn't have to switch back to the 51. So let me just play a little clip here.
And turn the volume up. Oh, it is up already. Let's go ahead and see if we can get some sound out of this. If I remember this command okay, we should get some sound here. Now, I heard it, but it wasn't very loud. Let me see if I can turn this up. Okay, this is turned up way more than it normally would be. Here's the sound again. So we are definitely getting sound, but it's super low. So perhaps there's something wrong here with this setup. And let's see if the monochrome is working. There's the color composite. Let's plug in the monochrome. Yep, there we go. Wow, that's really sharp. I can see if you were using this to do a lot of typing, this would be really useful for you because this is super clear. It's kind of a gray, and you're getting a kind of a, you can see the colors don't come across very well, obviously, since we've got monochrome on. That is really nice for typing. And if
you did get the sound working, but I wanted to show, I think he does a clip of one
I should mention while you look, I may have said, I had a TV with a color killer button on the back, did the same thing. Beautiful results. So yeah. Look on the back of your old TV. If it has that button, you don't need to do the mod.
Now, you will notice here on his color, because this is the first time he tried running Dagger out, which, of course, is the program you should be testing. But you'll notice he's getting that kind of yellowed buff, and he's also getting that fraying of on the right-hand side between the black and the white of the border. You're getting that band, and that's, I can't remember, there's a certain chip that usually causes that problem that people have had to fix. Rick, you might remember.
There's the 555 timer and a chip that that regulates the color burst, and you get it messed up a little, and yeah.
Yeah. So
Let's
that's
do
something you
modern
just
art.
basically replace that and you can kind of fix it. But he wants to show the difference between running it in composite. Now his composite color here is, because of the 555, is a little bit off, worse than it would normally be. But
It's
when
got
you
a
switch to the
green
composite,
border.
it's just night and day. What's that, Nick?
His border is green as well.
Yeah, because that 555 just starts shifting colors on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the color
The
burst is
text is
just
the-
not where it's supposed to be at all.
Yeah.
And
The
so, yeah.
NTSC artifact colors, which is one of the reasons you would want to play this in mono mode. But I played this a ton of times just like this with the NTSC artifacts on anyway. I didn't really care. Yeah, I don't like that actually over composite. Let's go ahead and switch to mono mode. This is the demo that's running, by the way, behind me right now. Look how much clearer that is in mono mode. This was my preferred way to play it. It was much easier to read, but anyway, I know this like the back of my hand. So to start the game, you just hit a key. It'll go ahead and load it up. And while this is preparing, you can go ahead and start doing stuff. So I'm going to pull, whoops.
Anyway, it does make a huge difference. And this is actually one of the few things I liked Radio Shack's CM8 monitor when it came out, because Dagrath did look a lot better. Of course, it just did pure black and white. Sucked for every other composite video game just about, but it was good on that. So, and of course, Aaron is a huge fan of Dagrath back from when he was a kid, and he actually sells Dungeons of Dagrath t-shirts if you want to get one. I'll give him a little bit of a plug there. But anyway, the schematic for that's actually available. So if somebody doesn't have the color kill switch like Rick was mentioning and wants to actually run it off, a composite capable TV, the old CRT ones, it looks like a fairly simple circuit, and you can actually get the schematic online, and he tells you where to get it in the comments, and you can go put it in yourself and hopefully get the same result he did. Though you should fix your 555 if you're getting that much color bleed.
Right. That's sad.
Next up, we've got Bob Emery's actually got a couple of videos that came out this week. So the first one is music you did using the play command, and you did this a couple decades ago, if I understand. Like, this is not something you wrote recently. It's just something you kind of refound recently. Is that right?
This was part of my color fog installer program. Like, when you would install it, after it checked your system and made sure it could install, like it verified the ROM versions and everything, then it would play this little song and proceed with the installation.
Okay, so I'll just play a little clip of that. I'm not going to play the whole thing.
And this isn't it. But
video today. I wanted to show you guys basically some basic coding, how to use the play command in BASIC. This is just a
I'll
little
let people watch
snippet that I wrote
the full
about
video to
20
get
years
the
ago,
full details of that, but I wanted to
and
get the play
very few
itself.
people have ever heard this, actually. It was kind of an Easter. I'll know by what your comment was, won't I? So anyway, here we go. Let's give a listen. All right, there you have it. Did you guess Tom Sawyer? If so, congratulations. If not, well, it's not surprising looking at that lame but moderately successful attempt, I guess, to play Tom Sawyer.
no copyright
and
strike on that video.
I like the fact you actually did some like volume settings and stuff, and you kind of did sweep sound and stuff there too. And you're using like flats, and the pause command, which Nick just reminded me this past week even existed. I totally forgot about that. The P command within play.
Oh yeah.
Because actually Nick pointed out, like, it's fairly fine tuned as to what kind of pause delays you want. And usually if I need a time delay, like if I'm switching between frames of an animation or something like that, I usually do 4 next loops. Because I remember still to this day from the color basic manual, for T equals 1 to 460 : next is approximately 1 full second. And just doing a play string or play quote P4 instead is a lot less to type. And if you need variable pauses, of course, you can just create separate strings and stuff, and instead of entirely separate loops. So it saves you a bit in program memory too. So, but you go through an explanation, kind of explaining some of the play command options and stuff like that too. It's actually a fairly decent command. I wish they'd picked a better, since they're basically totally taking over the machine to play anyway. I think they should have made a smoother waveform than what they picked because they kind of just did the standard square wave stuff. I know there's third-party ones, including Rainbow, I think, published one. They did enhanced play commands that would link into BASIC, and you actually do multi-voice and all kinds of stuff like that using the Musica Lyra style musical notes with smoother, synth sine wave-based forms versus just straight square wave. But still, I mean, for the time, the fact we had volume controls, I think we were the first play command that Microsoft ever did that had volume controls. I think the PC did a little bit later on. Because of the PC GWiz basic, put the play and the draw commands that came from the CoCo first, and basically added a few extra features to it, but basically kept it pretty well the same. So you can actually translate programs fairly easy across if the res is right or the sound capabilities are correct. I think your main one this week was, oh no, I broke my MPI Mini. Can I fix it? So you want to explain exactly what broke, and then if you want me to jump to a certain part of the video, let me know.
Yeah, I don't know, wherever. Yeah, basically one of the little two switches on the side broke on the basically the 0 or 1 switch.
Oh, yeah, those were evil.
So I couldn't tell it, which one to boot from. And then I spent like an hour or so. Like I found the printed circuit JPEG of it on Zipster's website. So I was measuring the pins spacing and stuff and holding up a 40-pin connector to make sure I had the scale correct and get the exact measurements. And then I went through DigiKey and was looking for switches with the right size, and I got a part number, and then I opened it up and found that same part number printed on the silk screen.
Oh, beauty.
Yeah.
So basically, you got it fixed, I think.
Yeah, I felt reassured that I chose the correct switch.
Now, do you also... Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Rick.
I was going to say, did you get 4 or 5 of them while you were there?
No, I did order. I did have to order a bunch of other stuff, so...
Well, you're going to have to order one of these again, so... just
you
be
think?
prepared. Yeah, I use these switches. You'll be buying more of them.
Uh-oh. Well, maybe you should
have that little handle comes. I think vibration will break that little handle off. I'm using them in the CoCo IO, and yeah, they're not as strong as one might require.
Well,
I should mention too, this is one of the products that Ed Snyder's Zipsterstone actually still makes. We get little rounds like half a dozen or something.
This was a brand new one that I ordered from his website right before the fest, and
wow, you broke that quick.
Actually, right before. Yeah, it was like within a week. Probably because I wasn't used to the switch, which way is forward and back, and I was just trying to pull it towards me.
Yeah, I think the handles are too long for their physical strength. But yeah, we have the same problems.
The cutout is a little bit too big in the
so there's a little too much rock in the switch rather than there's something going on with those, but that's what you need. I mean, I had to do the same thing.
Yeah. We should also mention Ed also sells a 4-slot Mega Mini MPI, which is not just a 4-slot MPI, like basically this with 2 extra slots, but also supports high-speed 16550 serial ports and a sound chip and a bunch of other things on it, including a bit of a programmable interrupt timer, etc. So it's a lot more advanced. This basically just is a 2-slot MPI if you want to hook a couple cartridges up. Also, this the Mini MPI in particular, I can't remember if the Mega Mini does or not, but the Mini MPI for sure does work on the Dragon as well. So if you want to get the ability to plug a couple carts into a Dragon, this also works. And like I said, Ed brings these up every few months. He'll have half a dozen to 10 made. And if you just catch them at the right time, you can order them and get them. And like Bob, did you find out that he was selling them, or did you just happen to hit his page and wait, they're in stock?
Someone posted on the Discord that there were 4 of them in stock, and I snagged one immediately.
And, I wish we had a bit of a schedule or something from Ed that, in a month I'll be putting this up, because it's really hard to get in right at the ground floor before they get sold out again.
And if we get
we need second source.
Right. I was doing just adding a little fresh solder, but it didn't even need it. It was all pretty fresh.
Everyone observed this desoldering tool. I really like it.
Yeah, I saw comments about that in the
multi-pin desolderer. Yeah.
And even with all my fumbling, it takes me 12 seconds.
That's fine.
See, by this point, I would have burned a large hole into my thumb at this point.
Right.
So it's just
Blown a
watching that
couple of
whole thing
caps
just
off the
scared the hell out of
board,
me.
and
Yeah, I like
in
that
my,
soldering iron that someone posted on Discord. The one that they
Oh,
use
yeah.
for stained glass.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, I've got one of those. It's the size of a, yeah.
It's like, that's what I need for ground planes.
Yep. It'll do them.
Hey, the good thing is you got it all up and running again. And do you have a Mega Mini MPI as well, or just the Mini?
Just this Mini and a couple of stock, Radio Shack.
Oh, so you do have some
MPIs.
4-slot ones, just not with all the extra
Just for
features.
backups, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ed sure does a nice soldering job.
Well, he's got a machine that does that, I think, same as Frank at Retro Rewind does.
Yeah,
Except the
this is
STC,
all-
they have to hand solder those. Next up, I think
Anybody-
Jason's off the call, or is he still on?
Yeah, he had
he
to go.
left.
Okay.
Have we
So
heard
anyway, he
about-
posted a couple of videos. One was part 1, and he said on the pre-show that his part 2 covering Coco Fest this year will be up tonight. I can't remember what time he said, 7 or 8 Eastern, I think,
7.
something like that. I don't know if anybody else remembers, but basically
said
tonight
7.
sometime. 7, which time zone?
Eastern.
Eastern, okay. So that would be in math, 4 hours, 4 hours, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Anyway, the first one here has got a 41, almost 42 minute going through, most of Coco Fest. I think mainly on the Saturday. And the second video that's releasing tonight will be the second day. So I'll let you guys watch it. We've played a few other clips from the fest here already, so I won't play this right now. If you want to wait, you can actually watch both parts in a row as of tonight. So that might be even a better way to gather it all in one shot. But the other thing is, he actually recorded our entire jam session, which got at least 6 copyright strikes. So apparently we were playing some of the songs fairly well because they recognized a few of them. Ironically enough, the song parody that I wrote lyrics for, we fix them up a little bit just before we actually played it live because there was a few things to try to get it a bit smoother. And it's a parody of Tommy Two Tone's 8675309 Jenny, which of course I made it to upgrade to a 6309. Paul was trying to sing it and play at the same time when we did a little practice session in the afternoon. And it was just too complicated in certain spots. So that's when we elected to grab Stevie, who's a ham and doesn't mind playing, live and singing live at all. So he took over the singing duties, and he's got the lyrics on the phone after we did some modifications to it. We played that whole song, though, and I mean, the song is pretty well dead on to the original, like the music side. The lyrics are completely different, no copyright strike as far as Jason knew. So I don't know if it catches parodies. I think the algorithm must be checking the lyrics more so than the music background. I'm not sure. Anyway, I don't think I want to play it for you guys here. I'll let you guys do that on your own. But if you go jump into 7 minutes and 22 seconds.
Play it. It's all right.
You sure?
Yeah.
I'm going to take a vote on this one. Both from the chat and from on the panel here. Who actually wants to hear this?
Wasn't even there, and I'm already going cringe.
See, that was what I thought the general reaction would be. So I got a no from Henry, a yes from Nick. How about the rest of the people on the panel?
No.
I'm a yes.
Okay, we're tied still. How about Rick and Ken?
Be very, very quiet.
That means no, I guess. You don't want to hear anything?
Uh,
I was there. I don't need to hear it again.
Well,
sorry, Nick, you got outvoted.
You got
oh,
two
wait a
yeses
thing though.
in the
He said
audience.
yes. Tom Eric Anderson says yes.
Oh,
we're tied again.
We're
Four each.
downvoted. Yeah.
We're no, it's tied 4 each.
Oh no.
Who's the
Now the
tiebreaker?
chat-
I think we've
Either
already gone
way
through everybody
for
on the
me.
show panel, so it might be in the chat tiebreaker.
I don't think Kevin's voted yet, has he?
Oh yeah, Kevin Holloway, if you're around, you
I
you
said
have the
either way for me.
Oh, that helps.
Oh, what
so
a cop
he's
out.
present. He
Cop
voted
out.
present. What a.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, well, somebody's got to vote. We're hung.
Yeah, but somebody in the chat,
Son,
you're gonna have to
somebody in the
break the
chat.
vote. The next vote, yes or no, will determine whether we play it or not. And wait a minute, I think saying I missed the jam session as I was
Okay,
beat out.
James
got a yes.
Jones threw it.
God.
I'll just mute my head.
James Dote said yes. So we've got
Right.
the tiebreaker vote, so we're gonna play it.
Okay.
Here we go.
For those of you that don't want to, just turn down your volumes. It's just a few minutes long. I will scroll up. You won't have to see us. That'll be my break for you guys. So you'll have to hear us, but you won't have to see us. Because I did put the lyrics actually down in the comments, so you guys can actually follow along if you want to. So
me, I'd like to get some work done before the tornadoes get here.
Perform an original composition by L Curtis Boyle, or it's a parody. Yeah. It's original parody by L Curtis Boyle.
I was going to ask if this is loud enough, but I know most of you guys don't want to hear it anyway, so we'll probably plenty loud.
Hey, the video. The video.
Well, the whole point is the lyrics, though, are Coco specific. Yeah, I'll throw on the lyrics now. You've seen us play. We're just over here. I'm disappointed we didn't get a copyright strike in this.
Well, we might yet.
Yeah, it's true.
Still trying.
No cat barf yet.
But you see Paul playing a decent solo, unlike me. The rest of the lyrics are repeated, so go back to this.
Nice.
It's going to stop. It's going to stop.
Poor Mark Marlette was right beside us on the left side, just off camera here, having to hear all this while he's trying to solder boards. So if anybody's upgrade got screwed up, I apologize.
I must admit, I am a little surprised at this.
Hey, I won't play it right to the very end because it's just a fade out kind of thing. But
Thank
anyway.
God. I am of two minds of this. I am not sure whether I should be like running screaming next time I hear Coco Fest Jam Session, or whether I should say, you guys need some drums and bring an electronic drum kit.
There was an electronic drum kit. Actually, they were playing it a bit later in the jam. But unfortunately, Brian Schubring only had his keyboard there. So you're trying to play drums using a piano keyboard. He does have an actual electric drum set kit that it's got the little pads and stuff that actually Stevie has actually drummed on it before, which is a lot easier if you're a drummer. So we have had that before, just Brian didn't bring it this year.
Okay.
Organization.
So I guess that leaves me at run screaming. That's good.
Run screaming. Well, or bring a suitcase drum kit that you can.
I have to say, this is one of the most polarizing things we've ever done on the show here, because I mean, the vote was split down the middle. I'm even just following the chat here. Like Tech Todd says 639 rocks, and Jim Rice says we've achieved a new level of nerdiness. James Jones says, well done, gentlemen. Wish you'd had a drummer, kind of following what Henry had said. But earlier on, 60 said, "Why could I not type no faster?" Kevin Holloway says everybody's a critic. William Athing says that was great job, guys. So it's kind of a mixed bag. There's no it's okay. It's all like this is great or this sucks.
You know,
It was actually a really good nerd parody. I've got to give it that. Good nerd parody, good music. Please forget the Trump hands. Good nerd parody, good music. I just don't care much for those kinds of things. They make me cringe.
what we were really missing was Taylor and Amy.
Yeah, they could have probably
they could have swung it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were actually. I told them ahead of time before everything happened where they couldn't make it, and they were planning on joining in on this, originally. But unfortunately, that just couldn't happen this year. The circumstances beyond everybody's control.
Right. Just
I
a
will
good
look forward to seeing
parody.
them next year.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I know that they've written parody songs. Like they wrote the 6502 song. They wrote the original first Coco song they did the first fest they attended to, where they were saying, 6809 is greater than 6502 and that kind of thing.
But you've got to hit that right balance of seriousness and smaltz, and some people can really do it. Almost worked here. I mean, it's really close. I don't think we're going to get any bump like they did from the 6502 song, though.
No, we'll probably get the opposite of anything.
I will lose it.
This song not endorsed by Henry.
Yeah, there are very few parodies I endorse, and this includes a lot of Weird Al parodies.
There's something wrong with you then, because Weird Al's awesome.
No, Weird Al's occasionally great, but he's occasionally
I disagree.
bad. Really,
he's almost always great. He does have some bad stuff, but he's done some really my favorite parodies of all time, including some nerd tech and movie stuff too. So I imagine that's probably the ones you would like, Henry. Would be his more nerd tech stuff. It's probably more of his.
Actually, no.
Okay.
My favorites by Weird Al are "Eat It" and "Fat."
Yep,
those. So you're a Michael Jackson fan, is what you're saying?
Well, it's more like
no. Those were really good, keyed into the originals.
Those were really good.
Yeah.
The other one that was really good that I didn't really listen to that much because I didn't care a lot for the original was Amish Paradise.
Oh, I love that one. That's one of my favorites.
Really
the video is awesome, even in that one.
Yeah,
You
made
haven't heard his Star Wars one? A brilliant Star Wars one.
Let's see which one.
What's it called?
Which one? My this here Anakin guy, maybe Vader someday later.
That's
that
it.
One?
That's the one. Yeah. That's great.
The American Pie parody.
Yeah.
That one I love too. That was a really good one. The video is good and done well. All about the Pentiums. That's a good one.
Yeah,
what do you got in there?
Pentium.
Dorito? Talking about how bad your CPU is. Like, how can you go wrong with that?
Yeah, no, it's good.
So, anyway, any more news?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, look at
see all
the
the tabs
man.
at the top?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Is anyone still watching the show after that?
Yes.
Like I said, it's polarizing. Just looking at the chat and even talking on the panel, you're like, people either like it, love it, or hate it, but they're not in between.
Right.
Well, we got one left on Twitch.
I know. I'm seeing 6. So
6 on Twitter. And the rest on YouTube.
yeah, 8-Bits in the Basement in France there, White and Nerdy. That's one of his favorite Weird Al parodies. That's a good one too. I guess it just depends what you're into, right? There's nothing wrong either way. It's just music is a personal taste, if you want to call this music.
Google is probably still trying to determine whether to do a copyright strike or to send us money to shut up.
Yeah, that's part of our fundraising campaign now.
Right.
If you want us to never play this again, please send a Patreon.
Yeah, Patreon. $5 a month. We'll never play this again.
Yeah, but if you quit paying it, we're playing it.
Okay.
Yeah, 60 Karen says, yeah, not a massive parody song fan either. The good ones are the exceptions that prove the rule. Once again, you're just wrong. But anyway.
Well, no. Wait a minute. Okay, 60. I got to ask 60 in this case. Is 60 or 60? Are you a Monty Python fan? Question mark. You probably said this before, but I'm not sure, because if you are, now I understand a little bit more of why I feel about things the way I feel about things. Because British Well, not really.
I think
but-
Tech Todd does the best, kind of being in the middle. He said it's fun to listen to, though admittedly it's not going on any of my normal playlists.
Right. Well, the
That pretty
thing
well sums
about
it up.
the thing about great parody is all of the bad parody that led up to it. So when you hear one that's really good, it's really good for a reason.
Now, one thing I will say, okay, and this is one that I just remembered. It is a Weird Al parody. When he did his parody of Achy Breaky.
Oh, this Achy Breaky song, the most annoying song I know. Yeah.
That parody was perfect because Billy Ray Cyrus, from what I understand, hated that song and was probably singing right along with Weird Al.
Oh, right. But it made $1 trillion million, so yeah.
So I guess going into parodies here, so I'm going to ask a question for those that do not like parodies as a general rule. Have you seen The Ruddles that Eric Idle helped do, which is a parody of the Beatles' entire history, written by one of the main Monty Python guys, and then also Spinal Tap? What is your opinions of those, which are considered classic parodies?
I've seen neither.
What? You've never seen Spinal Tap even? Holy cow.
That's
you
unusual.
really hate parodies.
Yeah, you really don't like parody.
That's all right. That's all right. Do a YouTube search. The Devil Went to Jamaica.
Oh, I've known that one for a long time. I won't play that on the show though.
No.
Why not?
Does that have anything to do with the Charlie Daniels Band?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
And Muppets.
And Muppets.
Oh God.
Yeah, and it's also it involves stuff that's not quite fully legalized in the States yet. So
that sounds like it's going to be funny with Animal Blazed.
Almost as good as the was it Kermit and Big Bird version? They did a kind of a mock Sesame Street along the same line. Anyway, we're getting off topic. Not that we ever do that on this show. All right, back to the show. Okay, TRS-80 Retro Programming released a video of his testing his Tales of Suburbia Stage 3 save game feature, and he's kind of doing live debugging, so I'm not going to play it because it's not fully baked yet. But he does mention during the show that he's planning on getting all of his games, including some of his mini games, including Tales of Suburbia. And he's got that one, term of the names of the other ones there. He's doing his Coco Ultimate's the next game he's working on. He's got another one that's basically done. That's kind of a ghost haunted house style thing. He's actually been putting those up on the archive fairly soon, and then I'll probably get game entries done for them too, because I got a lot of game entries to catch up on from games released lately. So I'm probably going to just wait till he's got one or two of those up, and then I'll just catch up all the new ones. Because we got Erico Montero's, he's got his Conan clone. Paul Shoemaker just released that one too with the trampoline where you have to catch the people. So I got to get that one on there too. So there's a whole bunch I've got to get on the site. And plus, I got to start getting back to the older ones too, and bring them all back. So, but it kind of goes to the detail of figuring out how to get a save game to work. Next up, we have a couple from Thomas Cherry Holmes of FujiNet fame. So the first one here is a bit of more of a technical one, and this is for people running the TNMS server. If you're running 24.0522.1 is the new one. Which fixes, as he puts it, a crucial bug found when deploying the new TCP transport. Is recommended that everyone using FujiNet switch to run it and is running the TNFS server should get this update. There will be updates coming for the clients later on too. I don't know. This was posted a few days ago. I don't know if anybody here is active on the FujiNet side has seen if the new clients have come out yet, but basically it's to fix some underlying bugs on the transport. I know, Rick, I've been following on the CoCo.io there too. We're having some issues where certain CoCos aren't working again from Boise, I think it was. I think one of his doesn't work, or it doesn't work with a certain type of MPI or something. So like you guys are both having some things to try to cut down.
Just before the fest, we released new software, the Axiom 41C release, and some things aren't booting very well off of it at this point, which may be more to the point of the software was released a week or two before CoCo Fest than any real problem that's being uncovered. So we just need to look at it for a minute. So I haven't brought it up yet because we haven't really had time to tell Is this
okay.
a real
So it
problem?
says
Is this, you know?
research in progress.
Yeah, I haven't even had the time to put the old version of the ROM back on and see if that is different. So we're really undecided at this point. Is where we're at. I don't think it's hardware this time. I think it really is. We're just doing something in software that
Maybe timing's a bit off or something.
Something like that. So we have to determine what's going on yet. So I'm not going to say much more than that.
Okay. Fair enough. And anyway, if you're running FujiNet and you want to get the new server, like if you're running the server software yourself on your modern machine to go through, then this is a fix for that. And it will require some newer clients later on too. And then another one is just a general thing. He wants to see if somebody would help port 5-card stud to the CoCo for FujiNet. And I did see a comment that's saying that Brendan Donnie, he had contacted them because it's written in C. And most of the stuff for the CoCo for FujiNet, if not all of it, is written in CMOC. Brendan has a fair bit of familiarity with that working on CoCo VGA projects. And basically he put a screenshot up here of the Apple II, which is also artifact colors, which also produces reds and blues and stuff here. So that's actually a fairly close match for the CoCo. That's probably the one that's the closest, you know, compared to say an Atari, which actually has like a proper 16 color mode, unless you're making CoCo 3 only. He does want this to run on a CoCo 1, 2, or 3. So it sounds like Brendan's volunteered. I don't know how far he's gotten on it. Maybe he'll demo it at VCF in Dallas next month. But yeah, if anybody wants to help and anybody's good at programming in C, and especially is familiar with CMOC on the CoCo, this would be a great place to, you know, volunteer and help them get some of the other stuff working, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that's been done on the Atari and the Atom and the Apple II. You know, there's much more software already converted over on those platforms than on the CoCo, because the CoCo is more of a recent add-on build. But you know, can't do everything yourself. I mean, I found that out doing Nitrous 9. You just can't do everything yourself unless you have very long delays between releases type thing. Anyway, if you want to contact Thomas, you can contact him directly in the TRS-80 Color Computer group on Facebook, and you work out the details. Next up, Mike Rayburn. He posted a correction brought to his attention by a user that tried this. So he did his CoCo PS2 kit, which is a PS2 adapter for the CoCo, and he's put up a picture of the circuit board you can see here, plus some instructions of what to do and how to do it. But this other person found out that a critical step was missing, and it actually won't work properly if you don't do this. And of course, since it wasn't on there, you know, people might not. Now, I believe this is one of those kits where you can order like a pre-done, pre-made circuit board, and you just kind of, you know, do the final bits yourself. But he basically published the correction. He's updated the actual document itself. So you should have absolutely no problems doing the CoCo PS2 project now. But thanks to Mike Rayburn, and thanks to the user. He didn't name the user, I don't believe, but for, you know, finding that and pointing it out to him so we can correct it. Next up, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the They Create Worlds podcast, which is kind of going through the history of the computer industry type thing, and they're, you know, 170 episodes in. So they did a 3-part series from episode 172 to 174, which is kind of going into the computer price wars. And this starts in the 70s with the PET and the Apple II and the TRS-80. Part 2, which I've got highlighted on the screen here, is getting into the 1979 to 1981 era. So we've got the TI-99, then the TI-94A, the Atari 400-8 under the CoCo. Now, I'm a bit disappointed. They kind of poo-pooed on the CoCo and said it was basically not relevant. And, you know, and then they could spend a bunch of time on the TI-99, which by, you know, early 84 was gone. Totally gone. Never went anywhere. The only reason they sold, you know, as many units as they did, which is still less than the CoCo, was because they, you know, brought the price down so far they were losing $100 per unit type thing. Maybe I might be exaggerating slightly, but they were losing money on everything.
More than that. I bought mine for $99, and I know they cost more like $350 to make. So,
yeah. And the fact that the CoCo, calling it irrelevant when it's one of the very few 8-bits that lasted from 1980 until 1990 and was still sold as new, kind of, you know, belies their whole premise of it being not relevant, because it outlasted most of the ones they're hyping up on. So I think they have a bit of a bias, possibly against Tandy, because listening to their TRS-80 Model 1 thing too, they also kind of poo-pooed that a little bit as well. They definitely seem to be Atari fans, I will say that. So I was a little disappointed, but I mean, if you want a bit of a history, they do cover some of the history with, you know, albeit a bit of a bias. But just the general history of the computer price wars in the 80s, which actually, sunk several computers and companies because the TI-99 died. TI never made a home computer really again for a while. The Coleco Atom, another one that came out around this, early 80s time, capsized and died, and there's several other ones, and then other ones that survived, other ones that did really well. Like I can't argue the C64s, how well it sold or how well the VIC-20 and stuff sold, but the Coco wasn't far off. I mean,
right? Well,
they sold several millions of them over the course of its life, and they sold at least 500,000 by the time the Coco 2 came out of just the Coco 1 alone, which is this time period.
I think it's funny when they're comparing prices, they compare the Coco to the VIC-20, and then when they compare performance, they compare the Coco to the Commodore 64. Sometimes in the same article. It's like, okay, pick what you're comparing us against. Anyway.
Yeah, there's that bit of a bias there.
I've also noticed that Tandy just in a lot of the retro environments, Tandy is rare in a lot of retro environments until you hit the 1,000. Like you look at any of the Z80 machines. Yes, I'm American. I said Z80, so sue me. Any of the Z80 machines and any of the like 16s, the 8-inch machines, any of those, it's like I go through and I see all sorts of apples, all sorts of Altairs, all sorts of this, that, and the other. It's really strangely rare.
Yeah, and they sold like the Tier City Model 1 for the first 2 years of existence outsold every single other 8-bit combined.
And yet you don't see them nearly as frequently as you see an Apple II. Now, given the one didn't last as long as the Apple II did, so you've got a lot of Apple IIs to choose from, but you don't see this. You don't see the 8-inch models sticking around in the retro circles, despite the fact that there were similar systems throughout there. Tandy, I'm not going to say they were an underdog. I mean,
there's a prejudice against them, I think.
Yeah, I think so. They just weren't a household name. Radio Shack wasn't a household name in the same way that Commodore or Apple was. And I have a sneaking suspicion it's because of the amount of money that Apple pumped into the education market that Tandy was still trying to break into.
Right.
Yeah, and Tandy was fairly successful. I think they were among the top 2 or 3 manufacturers right through 84, 85 for the education market, if not later.
Top 3, but in America you can only have 2, so you had Apple and Commodore, and then
I'll put
everyone
it to you this
else
way.
was.
I was in the second worst educational system in the country. Okay, I was in the West Virginia public education system, and our classrooms did not have Tandys. They had Apples.
Yeah, which were way more expensive, though they offered huge discounts for education.
And that's probably why, because West Virginia probably got a bunch of free apples.
Right.
See, my other theory on the prejudicing against Tandy and tier cities in general, the whole Trash 80 thing. I think another problem is that the other machines didn't have their own retail store chain, so they were selling them in Kmart's and all kinds of things, so people could just wander in looking for clothes. And they suddenly see a computer. Oh, my kid's been bugging me about getting a computer, so we'll just buy whatever's on the shelf.
Commodore was the one who started that.
Yeah,
right.
And Atari was the first one to was big in like being in the department stores with the 2600 with VCS. Commodore was the one that walked into Sears and walked into Montgomery Ward's and said, "Here, buy this at this price, sell it at this price." And they walked off the shelves with money in the till. Apple was not to be found anywhere outside of an Apple distributor for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, like actual
any
computer
of the
stores.
Computer names, right? And so the one that had the brands that you saw when you walked into your random department store queue were Commodore and Atari, maybe TI later on, but Commodore and Atari.
Yeah, because for me, there was like 3 tiers to it. So you had the general stores that sold, everything from clothes to candy to food to whatever, which would be the Kmart's, et cetera, that we talked about just now. And that was the Atari and Commodore mainly. So that was people not even looking for a computer at the time, but they just happened to see it on the shelf, and it's usually the cheaper ones that were there. Then you have the general computer stores, which sold everything under the sun, including Commodores and Ataris, but also sold like IBMs. And so you had all these generalized computer stores. So if people were looking for a computer, they could pick any computer store on the planet. With Tandy, because except for their brief experiment with the TDP 100 through RCA stores, only sold their own stuff in their own stores, and there was not much third-party software in these other general computer stores for the CoCo or the Tandy. And I think that was part of the problem. I mean, they had 8,000 or 7,000 stores by the mid to late 80s, but
if they had taken the 3 and the CoCo and only those 2 items into the general stores, Tandy would have blown up. If they'd have taken the 1,000 into the general stores, Tandy would have blown up.
Well, and they could have even brought third-party hardware into the or software into the Tandy stores, and they would have
because that was
blown up.
one thing. You'd go in a Tandy store, you only saw Tandy branded software. That
Same
there's not that
36
much
programs on every 7,000 stores. Same 36 programs. It's why.
That was one thing. They did very late, like 88, when they started the express order catalog. They would at least have a catalog of third-party software you could see, and there was hundreds and hundreds or thousands of software for all the machines, but they wouldn't carry the actual software in the store for you to try. You had to read a blurb and decide, is it worthwhile ordering?
And no
so that
impulse
didn't really
buys
help all
here.
that much. It let you know there was more out there, didn't let you know the quality, didn't let you know what it looked like, how it ran. So that was kind of a failed experiment to me too, I think. But yeah, I think the prejudice, I think, is because the fact that anybody wanted or got into the Tandy and Radio Shack TRS-80 lines or the Tandy 1000 lines is that you had to go to Radio Shack stores specifically to find them. If you're just shopping with your mom or something like that, or your wife or husband or whatever, then unless you were looking for something at a Radio Shack store, if you're an electronics nut, you wouldn't see any of this stuff.
Right.
You went to Kmart or Walmart, you wouldn't see any of this. Or Canadian
So
Tire
here-
up here, they sold Amigas and stuff here too, and C64s and.
Now,
So-
in the business and education market, Tandy actually had sales offices, separate sales offices that were not attached to any stores, that had outside sales reps that had all the business stuff on display, and the outside sales reps would go to businesses and present the computers, or they would go to the school board meetings to try to bid on that stuff.
I think Huntington, West Virginia was one of the first 01 stores in the state, and possibly even one of the first in the country. But because I think when Mom was hired on, she was hired on at a standard Radio Shack store, and then it became an 01, and then the 01 store got tacked onto the side of it. But if they'd have had their 01 stores not tacked onto the side of the regular stores and just had the 01 stores somewhere else in the market area that had a lot of foot traffic, maybe they'd have done better.
Yeah, in our area, it was in a strip. Basically, it was a bay in a strip mall that there was no other Radio Shack store for about a mile around in any direction.
And it was an 01 store?
I don't remember the number of it, but it was dedicated the business, a business store. You had the outside sales reps, and they only had.
Okay, so it wasn't labeled Computer Center.
Yeah, it was a Radio Shack Computer Center.
Okay, that's what I mean by an 01 store. So it was an 01 store. Okay.
And then about 2 miles down the road, the place where I worked was actually the service center for those business computers.
Ah, yes. Sorry, Tandy family. That means that I know some of the terminology.
Sure. And then so we would have basically a delivery driver that went around to all the stores to pick up the stuff the customers dropped off, and then we would hit a couple of school districts, bigger school districts, and pick up all the stuff and scrape all the gum out of the disk drives.
Yep. There you go.
That was a good place to stash gum, let me tell you.
Are you chewing gum? No.
just stick it in the 5-inch drive. And those school districts had like Model 3s and 4s.
So this year, let me shrink the window down a bit so it zooms up a bit here for people. But this is some research I've been doing on trying to figure out sales figures because, of course, the Tandy people that actually work there know these things, don't want to tell it for some reason, which I found out going through annual reports by Tandy. Charles Tandy did allow sales figures to go in the annual reports. Like they said, the first year they sold 100,000 TRS-80, what became the Model 1. Second year was 200,000. After he passed away, that's when they clammed up. So that was like a John Roach or one of the people, that succeeded Charles. So I don't understand why they went that way. At the time, I understand. I mean, you don't want to give away your secrets of how many you're selling in certain markets, et cetera, and they still do that to this day. But, after the fact, dozens of years later, like now, I don't understand why it's such a top secret. It means nothing to anybody except for historical purposes. But these are some of the actual quotes I found from various magazines, et cetera. Now, where they got this information from, I don't know. How accurate it is, don't know. But for example, here, 80 Micro, June 1983, page 320, has the W5YI report showing the top final unit sales figures for the year for microcomputers. The Timex Sinclair ZX8X 80 or 81, 600,000. The VIC-20, 400,000. T9-4A, 300,000. This is when they started bargain binning the TI. And that was tied with the Atari 8-bit, so the 400 and 800 combined at 300, and the TRS-80 color computers at 200,000. So we're not that far off, even at that point. Wayne Green in his column in Hot Coco July 1983 in the off-color column said with an estimated 417,000 Cocos already out there, and again, and many in prospect. And this is before the 64K Coco came out. This is before the Coco 2 came out. So this is back to the old, up to the NF board type thing. There's some stuff here about, circulation of magazines and stuff too. But it looks like there's a fair bit here. Australian Coco magazine, November 1987. So this is, a little bit later at the Coco 3. And they said, an unaware article by Laurie O'Shea, but said Tandy Color Computer steadily succeeded in winning friends and has sold about 2 million units in 7 years. And I don't know what models that's all including. I don't know what countries that's all including. In 1986 alone, Tandy sold 668,000 machines in the retail market. This comprised of 276,000 proprietary, which is TRS-DOS and Cocos, and by that time, I'm guessing it's mostly Cocos, and 272,000 PC-DOS machines and 120,000 portables, including the Model 100. That means they sold more of their proprietary machines in 86 than they did PC clones like the Tandy 1000. So they were still getting outsold. And that was one of the most popular PC clones. And there's a bunch of others. I can scroll through all these different ones here. And then there's also stuff about circulation with Rainbow, because some people have been asking me about that earlier. So I tried to research that as much as I could. But it sounds like, and there's one quote in one of the annual reports, and I probably should do a little show on that a little bit later sometime, where they mentioned specifically that people were, like some of the big companies that do research for the markets were saying sales figures they estimated for the color computer. And in one of the annual reports, I think it was in 83 or 84, the president in charge of that particular part of Radio Shack said their figures are so far off, we're selling 5 times as many as they claimed we are for the year, which should, kind of give you a hint, how skewed these estimates were. And that's because I think, how do you guess what Radio Shack has sold across 7,000 stores across the UK, Europe, Canada, Australia, and the States? How do you even try to figure out exactly what they sold accurately? So I know Mark has always said that the amount of Coco sold is way higher than was usually published. And that was a direct quote from their annual report, basically saying the same thing. Yeah, we sold 5 times as many as IDG claimed we did, or whatever it was. So yeah, I'm with Henry on this, that there's definitely a bit of a bias against them, maybe because a lot of these estimates were so lowballed that people thought it never sold anything. Or, just from Tandy being so secretive about it, which like I said, in the modern day, I don't understand why that's such a big secret anymore. But yeah, they did a lot better than I think a lot of people would say so. And a lot of people remember seeing them. We had a pretty big active club here with like 70 to 80 members for a city of 150,000. And I knew other people that just didn't want to bother joining the club, but had them as well. So it does seem to be somewhat regional. And I guess the last I'll say on this here, because people have been asking, like, how well did Rainbow sell? Now, you got to remember, Rainbow was something that Radio Shack would not sell in their stores, getting back to what Rick had said, that, something that would have promoted it. Yeah, we have a 350-page magazine devoted to this computer type thing, which is, big compared to all the rest of them. And Tandy, nope, we're not selling them. They did eventually buckle down and actually put in like a little advert in the Coco 3 case that you could actually order a Rainbow and try it out. And they only published these statement of ownership, management, and circulation figures once per year. And the earliest one I could find was in 84. And these are all in December. But at the peak, I think the 85 had 75,259 issues paid for per month. And they actually printed a few more of those because he gave some ways promos, etc. But you can kind of see, especially by the end of the Rainbow circulation, how much it had dropped and how much, Lonnie was likely losing money, but he wanted to keep going as long as he could. And the other thing I think people forget too, if we were such an unpopular computer, then why in mid-1983 did we have literally 5 full-color magazines devoted to the color computer?
Right.
this is in addition to Byte and Compute and Creative Computing and all the other ones that covered multiple systems. But we had Color Computer News, we had Color Computer Magazine, we had Hot Cocoa, we had Dynamic Color News, we had Rainbow. They got other stuff like TRS-80 Microcomputer News that covered it partly, and a bunch of others too. 80 Micro covered it a little bit. By the time they were switching to Hot Cocoa. But I mean, there weren't too many computers in that era that could handle having 5 magazines simultaneously. So I think that backs up the notion that, yeah, we sold a lot more than we're given credit for.
And then some of those magazines that covered multiple types of machines also included the CoCo.
Yeah, like Compute, Creative Computing, Byte. Yeah.
Or that kids one like I got up there.
Just look at this and imagine 35,000 magazines over the counter per month.
Yeah.
Over a hobby computer. Holy smokes.
And a hobby computer that's not selling this magazine in their actual stores. And in fact,
Right.
Radio Shack wouldn't even tell you these existed. You have to stumble upon them on your own like I did.
Walking through Kmart, look at this magazine, Rainbow. Yeah. 35,000 a month.
And like I was trying to figure like what estimate like for people that bought, I mean, in our club, we had some younger kids that had CoCos, but they couldn't afford a magazine. They couldn't afford a subscription. They couldn't even afford to buy a single issue, especially when it was 350 pages because they were getting expensive. So they'd borrow all the ones from the rest of us at the computer club meetings. So they were reading it. They just weren't part of the circulation number.
Right.
So how many CoCos would have actually been out there for them to sell, 75,000 of them per month? And what percentage? Like, is it 10% of the people that own one bought Rainbow? I mean, some people bought Computer Magazine, Hot Cocoa instead, so you can add those numbers too, right? So I don't know, but it's definitely, I think, a lot higher than a lot of people give credit for. Yeah, that's a little side aside there. And we'll now switch back to the last story I have. Or did I already finish it? Oh, a dragon one. Here we go.
We've been serenaded all show.
What do you mean?
Rick's birds.
Oh, I didn't realize those were audible.
I didn't hear them.
They were even at the pre-show.
Yeah, we'd be having birds.
It must be too close to that flyback transformer sound. I can no longer hear it, I guess.
Right.
Or it could be, because I played in that little jam session with that parody song that basically it's blasting my ears out and I can't hear anything.
Months. Yeah.
Okay, so a Dragon one. So Julian Brown has been posting a whole bunch of updates to what he's calling his expanded Dragon 32, which is a Dragon 32 replacement motherboard, kind of like Pedro's been doing for the CoCo. And he's kind of redesigned it to fit in an ATX case. Julian's just said in the chat, time to wake up. We're talking about him. So basically, he's got this board here, and it's actually got basically a 4-slot multi-pack kind of built in and gets some of the details. But I'll just read his description here. And this is the latest one. He's done multiple ones here. He's been going through this. So for the audio listeners, pretty much resolved, routed, and checked the ATX concept, but never satisfied. I have further plans afoot. I might have added 4 slots to match the ATX case expansion slots. The board is only big enough to provide 3 slots, but the next size up can do 4 slots and is only marginally larger. Slot 1 is only for video, one big chunk of wiring off the board. Slot 2 is intended for audio, another big chunk of the wiring gone. Slots 3 and 4 are identical in terms to wiring except for mapped memory. It needs a change to the memory banking scheme to open up the address blocks. The slot design is broadly just the old XT ISA spec, so it includes the full 16-bit address bus, but this is likely to be wasted, except maybe for variations on the video board. And of course, he's been making the PAL daughter board, the NTC daughter board, etc. I have a half-baked idea that I might be able to find a way to add a further memory expansion beyond the 256K, which is using a 32K banking scheme based on Stuart Archer's work and similar to the JNR banker that Ken has. Since the ISA bus permits a 20-bit wide address bus of 1 meg, this initial sketch repurposes those 4 extra bits, but I'm sure I can squeeze things in some other way, like restricting the video port to just the regular 15-bit range with paging via the banking, but allowing the upper 2 slots to access a full 20-bit bus. What is anyone going to do with a full mega RAM and a fast CPU is almost a mystery. Looking at you, and he mentions me by name, and well, where do you want to start? Nitrous 9, there, answered the question. There's space on the connector to go as far as 22 bits on the address bus, which would give you 4 meg. Now, because that goes outside. Well, this isn't MMU though. This is bank switch, so that would be a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, you can use RAM drives, windowing schemes. If you have the video RAM able to access out, you can map those completely out of the main system map. You can free up a ton of memory for the system there. Get put buffers if you want to do shared buffers like level 2 does on Nitrous 9. You could even fit that kind of stuff into level 1. All kinds of stuff you could do. Don't get me started, Julian. Well, I thought I'd read that out and I'll kind of show a picture of his ref motherboard design. Like I said, this is undergoing constant change. It's not quite done yet, but like Pedro has been kind of thinking of. Sorry, go ahead, Bob.
You can even do the get put buffers under basic.
Yeah, just like HBuff does on the Coco 3, right? Because that's all mapped outside of the main.
Have all kind of sprites in memory.
Yeah. Print spool buffer if you're still using printers on your Dragon. That's another one. If you want to do digitized sound effects, you can put all the digitized sound samples in the upper memory and just blast it out. When you need it at a certain speed. There's a ton of things, tons. So it's cool that he's doing the same thing that Pedro and others are doing. They're taking the existing Coco 3, they duplicate that design, then they start adding stuff. The stuff we're missing, like built-in MPIs and extra slots, or a built-in Gimme X or Gimme Z, or which is adding speed grades up higher. He did mention in an earlier post actually that this board should be able to handle a 3.5 megahertz 609 too, because he's going to do the full quad speed. So yeah, there's a ton of stuff, and if you have that much speed, then accessing the extra memory banks is actually going to be faster than just accessing local RAM on a regular 1 or 2 megahertz. So yeah, there's a ton of stuff. So anyway, an interesting project to keep following. I'm glad that people are reproducing the Cocos and the Dragons, so that because the hardware is getting rarer and harder to fix sometimes, hard to get parts. That they're not just trying to duplicate them now; they're actually trying to expand them without going outside the scope of what is a Coco and what is a Dragon. Like to me, putting a Mister and putting in a 25 megahertz Coco 3 FPGA just isn't quite the same thing. I know it does tickle the fancy of some people, and hats off to you. It's just not really what I like. I like to push the original hardware as much as I can, but if you're adding some stuff to make it pieces of it more modern, or using stuff that was too expensive to do back in the day, like say the Coco SDC or something like that, I like seeing that kind of project. I like to see where we can push it through software and hardware. And that's all the news I have for this week. A few more discussion topic stuff than I was expecting, but that's always fine. Most of it was about a badly written parody.
So does that mean we all have to go make new news now?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
And Ken, did you have any final words for Nick Marentes and his review of Rogue?
The only time you've been more wrong was the 5th time you remade that game of yours.
Whose name cannot be spoken
right now.
It's better than that parody that we saw.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that.
Actually, there was one part of your review, because actually Ken brought it up and we read it out from the OS9 newsletter. Nick, there's one part of your review we actually agreed with you on. Can you guess which part that would be?
I can't remember. No.
The sound sucked.
Well, yeah, I know that, but
and also you said that what your positive part of the review was the box looks okay.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, everyone agreed on those two.
And we disagreed with you pretty well en masse for the entire rest of your review.
As did thousands and thousands and thousands of people that bought that game on the number of different systems that it was released on.
Yeah, we found it ironic that you were saying that it would drive people to go to the Atari and the Amiga, which both had versions of Rogue that were bestsellers.
They all bought Rogue in droves. Yeah, well.
Let's put it this way, Nick. We're really glad you decided to stick with game development instead of being a reviewer.
Yes. Good developer. Critique, not so much.
But I will say, in all fairness, the latest version of Neutroid actually is good.
Oh yeah, that's the name of the game, Neutroid.
Yeah.
I blocked it out of my mind.
Oh, Nick, I should mention, because I think you joined after we talked about it, but I did mention during the project updates that when I get to the CocoTech episode with the special graphics technique, that you will be a co-presenter. Even if your program's not fully done, you'll have enough, I think, to show, some of the things that we accomplished.
Yeah. Cool.
So I just want to make sure I wasn't, hitting you with a bus there.
Oh, I thought that was a surprise for him. Guess what?
By the way, you're hosting the whole thing. I'm leaving. Bye.
That's it. We're playing the parody Endless Loop.
With Neutroid playing on the screen, the original version.
And this one will be dedicated to Henry.
Okay, we ready for the end?
Yeah, because you got to go fix the fridge, and I got to go buy and replace a doorknob on the door.
Entry is a good thing.
This concludes another episode of the CoCoNation, the world's leading live interactive talk show featuring the Technicolor computer. For all things the CoCoNation, visit us on the web at thecoconation.com. We'd love to hear from you. Send feedback, suggestions, even segments via email to show@thecoconation.com. The CoCoNation show would not exist without the community and its cast and crew. The CoCoNation theme song, copyright 2022, D. Bruce Moore. Mixed, mastered, and produced by D. Bruce Moore. The CoCoNation is over. Join us on the Coco Discord server. Coco forever.
And another reason we know the show's over is Ken just ran out of coffee.
Yeah. They're dry.
All right. Till
Now
next
Henry's
week.
just rubbing it in. He's got both a Tandy cup and he's drinking coffee.
And it's full.
It's actually a Tetris cup.
No, Henry's got a Tandy cup.
Henry's got a Tandy cup with coffee in it.
Oh, a Tandy color computer cup even. I didn't see that.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everybody.
Okay, see y'all next week.